How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Ara Still.
And Will Sell, and we're doing the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week. And once more, we are without the Fern. We don't have the Fern because the Fern is still, chugging away at his incredibly busy season right now, where he's had several things overlap, both in terms of his work and in terms of his family matters that he's got to take care of. But he says that he's passed. I think he's passed through, or is currently passing through, peak season right now for his busyness. So, with any luck, things will calm down. Although it seems like his busy schedule has been inconsistent since you report to me that he spent an awful lot of time playing Monster Hunter.
Yeah, he had several free days earlier. We'll get to that when we talk about my week a little bit. And he spent one of those days. He just came on at like normal time hours for me, and we did like 10 to 20 hunts together or something nuts like that. And he just
At
had
any rate, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server. It's the best place to communicate with the host of the show and other listeners, and you can do that by clicking on the link that should be provided in the show description underneath the show archive on YouTube, if Ari should remember to include it.
it auto includes whatever the last one was if I do forget, so it's definitely there. So, as usual for the filler shows, we're doing Palace of the Dead because my brain is not actually functional when it tries to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. So we need to do something that I can do on autopilot. However, this week, I'm not dead.
Yes, you sound a lot less like you are about to keel over.
Yeah, last week was not fun. What were we doing?
It was fun.
Uh-oh.
It was totally not fine. It was in no way fine.
Uh-oh.
You had the zigzag red line of doom for a minute there.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. My internet just had
You're coming in and out there.
Yeah. Pickle.
Pickle?
Pickle.
Pickle.
Uh-oh. In a timely manner. Yeah, my ping just skyrocketed for no reason. It appears to have corrected itself though. So, it looks like it was just a nasty lag spike that just hit. It is storming outside and weather does funny things to my internet connection. So, it appears we're okay though. Pickle.
Pickle.
Okay, we're good.
Well, now. So, have you checked? We're still connected. We're still live. You're still streaming. It hasn't pulled the plug on us.
I will load up the Microsoft Edge that I keep as the dedicated check the show stuff.
I guess it's sort of like appropriate because we have some sort of rule that we're not allowed to have a show that's not a technical catastrophe.
Yeah, so you're gonna get some dips in video quality a little bit for just a minute, but that's just the breaks when it comes to operating with not Fern's internet, who has the most stable internet of all of us, despite being on Australian government internet.
Well, we haven't tested mine, so
Yeah, so.
just remember I moved to a new place since the last time that I operated the rig, and I now buy a very expensive internet in order to hedge against these things.
Yes, so your video quality may be a little choppy, maybe be some buffering here and there, but it appears that everything was still going fine when I opened up Edge, and I immediately closed it because I don't want any extra drain on the anything. So I was not paying attention on this floor at all because I was busy trying to fix the stream. So already off to a great start because it wouldn't be a Volinari show without technical disasters.
Yeah, I think it's not so much that Fern's internet is incredible in any way, so much as Fern has a library of experience to draw on when resolving issues that spring up.
Yep. Also helps that, his internet doesn't just randomly spike like mine did there whenever it rains.
Yeah, I remember when at a previous flat that I was living in, that used to happen, and it got worse and worse over time. And eventually, we called the lines company, and they came out and they went and tinkered in a box down the street. And after that, the problem just went away.
I wish mine would just go away. Holy crap. That would be just lovely. Oh, items unavailable. Where's my interrupt button? The interrupt button needs to move. It does not need to go there. Not for Palace of the Dead. Double tap left trigger, D-pad down is about the worst spot you can be for an interrupt button. That needs to be pressed semi-regularly. So yeah, we're here this week. We have a little bit I've dumped in the news thing to talk about. I'm sure Vol will get a lot of time talking about all the Type Moon stuff. And what else? Just in general, not as dead as last week, but still doing Palace of the Dead. So just you can watch us run around, or watch me guide Vol around as we attempt to see how far we can go while I'm half paying attention.
Or don't if you don't want to fall asleep.
Yeah, it's really not that interesting. But yeah, every time we come in here to do this for the show, I realize just how autopilot it is for me now to get through these earlier floors.
Well, you have spent a lot of time in here.
Yeah.
Like a lot of time.
Yeah, I did like a solid month-ish of my main activity getting home from work to chill out was do Palace of the Dead and watch anime on the other monitor, or put an audiobook on, or put a podcast on or something. And yeah, Palace of the Dead was real good for that. And Heaven on High. I've done both quite a bit. Still have not cleared it. But one day, maybe. It's a long-term project. So yeah, I guess we can start with your week and how it's been. You've been telling me it's been super busy.
Well, it has been busy, but it's not. It shouldn't have been busy. It's busy because of people not fulfilling their obligations in part. It's mainly more work problems, which I told you a bit about last night, but basically it's a matter of people having strange ideas about what signing a contract to be employed obliges you to do, and one of those things is work. It never occurred to me that this would be a alien concept to some people.
Oh,
the idea that when you sign up for a job, you actually have to show up to it sometimes.
Oh, I do not have that much faith in humanity in general. I expect every single person I have to work with to take days to get back to me, or to flake out on me completely, and I have to keep pestering them.
It doesn't seem like a complicated concept.
Oh, we got them. It's open. You can go.
But yeah, so things were busier than they should have been, basically because everybody's a little bit more stretched than they should have been, and we're still in the busy season right now, and there's been a problem nationwide where the government mandates testing of poultry for, among other things, Campylobacter. And they have only approved one method of testing. And that requires a particular reagent to do the conformational testing that is supplied, I think, only by Nio Diagnostics, which is this one supply company in New Zealand, and you can't get it from elsewhere. And they're no longer supplying it. So we have this legally mandated government testing that needs to be done, except nobody can source the materials to do it, and will be legally liable if they fail to do so. Because the product doesn't exist anymore.
And you can only use that particular brand?
That's the only kind you're allowed to use because it's government approved. It has to be government approved for government testing, you know? That's how they've set it up.
Gotta love the government.
So, ain't nothing we can do about it. So, basically, we still have a little bit left. We haven't used up the last of our reserves yet. We've got a tiny bit left. Which means that other people that know we've got some, other various people who, like particularly businesses that run labs in-house, have been sending us their work that they would previously do in-house. It's just significantly increasing the quantity of crap we've got to do, basically, because now we're doing stuff that would have been done by other people. And so that's up to the workload pretty considerably. And I don't really like compiler back to testing very much because I do the tail end of testing, so I do the reading part and the interpretation. And compiler vector smells real bad. Like when it's actually growing, it's not a nice smell at all. I don't really want to talk too much more about the smell because the popular opinion on what it smells like is, yeah.
It's I'm thinking of it like the first time my granddaddy ever took me to a job site, when they opened the lid on the sewage tank, he's like, "You smell that? That's the smell of money."
I think sewage would be easier to take because it's not directly similar to anything. So I'll spit it out. The popular opinion on what compiler vector smells like is semen. Except very strong and pungent.
I see.
And if you've been working on it for a while, you keep hallucinating that you're smelling it for the rest of the day, and you can't stop smelling it.
Oh dear.
And so it's a very unpleasant experience all round, and one that I wish I could be parted from. However, that is my job, and I am the only one around who is fully trained to do this particular testing at the moment. So, yeah, I would rather not be busy, but I'm busy. Yeah, so what else this week? So the Oku rerun is going on FGO, which I sunk my scant free time into because I kind of want to complete it. I liked the event story-wise last time, and I want to give a good run of it, and the shop CE is actually a very useful one for a lot of challenge quests, particularly if you're going to do like a 3-turn blitz on a challenge quest, because it's one of the CEs that gives a 20 critical star burst on the first turn. Those are just extremely useful for challenge quests.
Was that one there last time as well?
Yes.
Okay. So
it's just that if you can get a second copy of it, there's more flexibility. Having more different variants of those is generally good, and this is a particularly good one because it also increases arts and quick effectiveness, which is going to be most of the cards that you're going to want to use on the sorts of supports that you'll typically have carrying those. So it's useful to get another copy of it. But so the thing is that Oku is sort of one of those events which has an extremely wide gap between concept and implementation. And by what I mean by that is it's set up in an awful way where you explore a dungeon by passing through tons of 1 AP sort of mini story nodes, where it's just like most of them will just have a line of text, and occasionally there will be a 5 AP one which has a battle. But because of the way the spaghetti code is set up in FGO, this prompts one of the sort of like the lesser fade to black loading screens every time you move one notch along on the map. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of these on every floor of the dungeon. So you spend a lot of time just sort of like... It eats a lot of time very quickly because the loading times are not long, even though my phone is not particularly ninja. The loading times are not terribly long, but how do I explain? It's sort of like the loading time is very brief, and it's the sort of brief span of time that it takes time, yes, but your brain doesn't really acknowledge it as time because it's very short, and if you've seen it a lot of times, you sort of just go into paralysis, waiting for it to unfade from black.
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing this over and over and over and over again. So literally hours can pass while you're making incredibly slow grinding process through this thing, because there's no way to like tap through it fast or anything, because it's just fade to black, unfade to black, fade to black, unfade to black. It's a very, very soul destroying implementation of a dungeon delve concept, and I really wish they had thought a bit harder about how they were doing it. But I think that in no small part they're operating from a case of they crapped out a really quite simple last gen mobile game, and I think that it is quite fair to say that FGO is a crappy game, and it is a crappy game. But the thing is that it's also a very old crappy game. Like it's 7 years old, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it was made when there wasn't really much to draw on for inspiration. It was made without cloning anything, really. I don't think there's anything that it's clone of. It was just sort of made in a vacuum by a team that presumably most of them aren't working on it anymore. And so it's got this sort of very difficult to work with, heavily encrypted source code that is just basically a mess. And so implementing new features is really difficult. And they talked about this quite a bit in a recent interview. And by recent, I mean as of this past week, where they talked a little bit about the development process and the switching from Delightworks to Lesengel as the developers and so on. And it seems like there are and have been lots of things they wanted to do, but a lot of it was strangled by the previous development system they had in place under Delightworks. So they were not very specific about it, but what it sounds like is their development team at Delightworks on FGO was completely siloed into individual jobs. Like one team of one or two people would have control over one aspect, another one would have control over another aspect, and no help or communication was allowed to pass between these siloed groups. And the net result of this is that the game was permanently behind schedule and permanently crunching. Which, I mean, that sounds like Japanese development in a nutshell, really. But for every team that is not Final Fantasies, because Final Fantasy have had bad experiences with crunch, and so they've made it a priority not to go back to that. But yeah, it sounds like development on FGO is basically hell. When what was it? They implemented append skills recently in the EN version. In the Japanese one, it would have been implemented a lot later, relatively speaking. But according to the interview, it was actually supposed to be implemented at Lost Belt launch, and that's just how far behind they were. So if you think about the time that when the Lost Belt started and the implementation of appends just very recently, and the at about another 50% of that, that's how far behind schedule they were on features development.
Well, I'm going to the next floor as a Manticore. Open that chest as soon as it turned into one. Well.
Oh, okay. You fuzzed out on my end, so I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
I just heard the word Manticore.
Oh.
So
I said I'm turned into gonna take a Manticore to the next floor, so open the chest once I turn into one.
Right. Well, I couldn't hear you, and I hope that the connection to YouTube is better than your connection to Discord.
I have a video backup if it's particularly bad, and that won't have any lag on my end, and you're sounding normal.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like their development was basically a huge mess, and they've implemented a few new features in the Japanese one just recently. Like, one of them is, in addition to the Brave Chain concept and the system where you get a bonus for 3 cards of the same type, they're adding another one for when all of the cards are different. So when all of the cards are different, then they all get the bonus that you would have for having that color of card in first place. Oh. So that means that when you have a rainbow combination, your priorities for card positions are different. So if if you let's say your priority is damage and you've got rainbow cards available, then going quick arts buster in order of ascending damage is actually optimal because the buster will have the bonus that buster would have if it was in position 1.
I see. But it still gets
And like,
the third card benefit that's
yeah,
separate.
and you'll get the third card benefit of magnitude. So that adds sort of another dimension to your card selection priorities and so forth. So yeah, that one it sounds to me like that was also in development for a long time and just they couldn't implement it. But according to the interview with Nasu and Takeuchi, it sounds like they have had in the works big plans for a long time to totally overhaul the gameplay loop, which is what everybody's been calling for because it's incredibly stale at this point, right?
Yeah.
But they've just been unable to implement it because of the sheer amount of reworking and rebalancing that would be required, and the fact that the development team under its old arrangement would basically be incapable of carrying it out because it was just such a mess. So now that they've got their feet planted on the ground at Lizengel, they're looking at working this in, and it seems like the former commitment that Nasu had to terminating the story at the end of Arc 2 has more or less evaporated at this point. And he's already talking about post Arc 2 story development.
I'm gonna Manticore again. Go stand by the chest and open it as soon as I...
Where is it?
It's right behind me.
Yeah, he's already talking about post rank 2 post Arc 2 story development, which suggests to me that a lot of his motivation for wanting to kill it was thinking that in the way things currently stood, development was so far behind that they were never going to catch up.
Oh crap! It's a boss. Can't Manticore that.
Manticore even work on this? I thought these things are immune to knock back.
They are. It does a little
This
bit.
is like stand between orbs or something, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it is. My connection is doing a thing again. Hang on.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, it appears to have corrected itself. How we do? Okay, we're green again.
Okay. It's not Discord, is it?
No, it's everything. It's until I thought about it.
No, not on my screen. It's not. You're the one who's doing the teleport. Stop bleeding. Stop bleeding, Aristeal.
So yes, the numbers are coming in real time again. Okay, now we're good.
Hello?
Pickle.
Pickle.
You know, that happened right when thunder boomed outside.
Your telecommunications infrastructure is such a freaking joke.
Yes. So yeah, sorry about that. You were saying something about FGO when I started to have an internet attack.
You had an attack of the internet.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know what I was saying because it was so long ago. But yeah, so it sounds like their decision to try and curtail the official story of FGO, to whatever extent that was the case, was linked to their development woes, and however much that is not a problem anymore, is going to affect going forward what decision they make carrying the whole thing forward. And honestly, I don't think anybody really wants it to end because they're so invested in it at this point. Like I said, it's 7 years old and there's a lot of people who've been playing for that entire duration. So
Yeah.
do I want to be close or far, or what?
It doesn't matter. It's just everybody in the line will be knocked back.
Right. But yeah, so it's looking like FGO has more of a future now, especially if they can roll out some of these gameplay loop developments. And when they say that they really want to overhaul the gameplay loop, that doesn't mean make tweaks if it was translated accurately from the original interview.
Yeah, they want to.
I can't really conceptualize on where they are planning to go.
Yeah, their
and
current
more
system
to
is
the point whether
so
it's going.
weird.
Well, it's old, right? It's old and it's not a clone. Like if you look at something like let's say Pinecone. Like Pinecone's a clone of any number of auto battlers. There are so many of them.
Yeah,
But FGO's not really a clone of anything, and nobody was dumb enough to try and clone FGO.
yeah,
So
because
yeah,
FGO only sells on its Type Moon branding. It doesn't exactly sell on its gameplay.
no. But I mean, how do you overhaul the gameplay loop? I think the battle mechanics will stay the same, probably. But the way those fit into the rest of the gameplay experience seems like it will probably change. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what the time scale for any of that is. Just that they've said that they intend to make it happen. So yeah, they're going through their big anniversary event in the Japanese server at the moment, and that's that's why all of these interviews are being done and things are being deployed alongside. They've released Shufu as a servant 3-star support, art support, because arts needed more support, right? The big fans of Quick are on suicide watch as usual, because they're still not getting any love. Still only got Skadi to work with. But yeah. And they also released the much anticipated Archetype Earth. Been a long time coming, that one. Probably the most demanded servant to be released of all time.
Yeah,
I think more so than any of the other ones. I think that she might have even been ahead of Muramasa in terms of things people were demanding be added to the game. But not sure about that. But yeah, I'm not really sure how the canon works. I think that they're planning to take the don't think about it too hard approach.
the thing.
Although it has been suggested that Archetype Earth will play a role in the next Lost Belt when they finally get there. If they finally get there.
If they ever get there, it's coming. They promise.
Yeah, like the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know how powerful she is in effect. People are posting lots of videos of her, of course, but she's a new servant, so they always will. But her skill set is quite interesting, and she looks powerful, but she doesn't look meta-defining, which I think is the best way to release a powerful new servant. Really, I don't like when a servant comes out and everybody has to recalibrate everything that they do just to accommodate that servant. Like, say, Ninika in Pinecone.
You mean the character that makes magic work?
Well, I mean, you've said that about other characters before.
Well, we're talking relative. Now magic can compete with and outpace the physical teams.
Yeah, if you've got, like, every character that's been released since the beginning of the game, then yes. Because
if you
it
just
seems to me that Magic is still lagging an awful long way behind in terms of your sort of options and mechanics you've got access to.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a bit, though.
But yeah, so yeah, the Archetype Earth's main gimmick, I guess, is that she causes a stage change. She causes a stage change to Millennium Castle Brunstad, where she has a ridiculous amount of buffs. So yeah, once you get that first one off, she's monstrously powerful, and I think she's got a cast from Cold Start NP battery as well, like Rapid Words of the Divine type, where you start with a Black Grail and you press the button and then you NP. So yeah, so she's definitely a very powerful tool, especially if you can support her with like Koyon Skya or someone. But yeah, I have yet to see exactly how that's all going to play out in terms of the meta long term. Whether it'll be now every farming team has gone from being like Morgan Koyon Skya Oberon to Archetype Earth Koyon Skya Oberon or whatever. They gave her the Moon Cancer class, which I'm sure is seriously rustling BB's jimmies, but I'm not quite sure what the justification is.
Maybe I don't know. That I guess she's on the moon, but she's kind of supposed to be there, so she's not exactly a moon cancer type. She's not a seraph related thing at all.
Well, the thing is that when you summon a moon cancer that is not BB, it will have the BB moon cancer card back art, and then there will be an animation that happens to it to transform it into a different card back. So it's sort of implied that moon cancer is an artificial class that exists for the moon cancer BB, except that that space can be taken and occupied by somebody else with the means to do so, which is why Kiara is able to do it. But I think that's bullying me. I don't want to be bullied by it. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what the logic there is, and there's a lot of like extant lore about the difference between the Tsukihime universe and the Fate universe, wherein the relative power positions of servants and dead apostle ancestors are reversed. But basically, the existence of Ultrog is what prevents the storyline of Tsukihime simply coming to a close by as a result of the sort of advancement of the plot arc that is Arquid, right? So because Ultrog exists to be her counterpoint, the story doesn't advance because they check each other effectively. But if Archetype Earth has to be disempowered in order to fit into a servant container to be a servant in the servant universe, that means she's significantly more powerful than a servant. And in that case, since Dead Apostle ancestors are canonically weaker than servants in the Fate universe, it means that Ultrog would be a joke to her. So, yeah, the canon doesn't really make sense anymore. I think chunks of it are probably going to have to be rewritten. It's sort of hard to tell how much of it is constant.
Well, the new Tsukihime remake apparently redoes a ton of the old background Tsukihime lore.
Frankly, it's sorely needed at this point because it's quite a mess.
Yeah, it's all carryovers from, I think, all the way back in Notes.
I'm not sure how much of... I feel like Notes was sort of like bedrock more than anything else. Like, it was not really that stuff was brought in from Notes, but the sort of the loose ideas that underpin the Notes universe also underpin the Tsukihime universe. But Notes kept it pretty vague, generally speaking. But that said, A-rays exist in the Fate universe as well. So, and they're tied into Yumarian's storyline. So it's sort of hard to tell how that's all going to fit together. I think that they should just they should swallow their pride and just fuse the two universes together instead of running those two in parallel when they don't have anything to do with each other. But their underpinning lore undermines each other. Like if they're simply happening in two different geographical locations, then that should be fine. You don't need to worry anymore about it. But they need to have the same basic metaphysics. I mean, come on.
I often wonder if Nasu split them up to stop himself from crossing
making the Type Moon cinematic universe.
Yeah. But he wouldn't be able to stop himself from referencing characters in one thing and the other. He does it all the time.
Well, I mean, it clearly hasn't worked because we've got characters from Kara no Kyokai in there. We've got characters from Requiem in there. We've got characters from Extra in there. Like every Type Moon branch franchise has already been dragged into FGO, and the Tsukihime one is just the most recent.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's I think that's a bit of a flimsy justification, really. The writers must have heard people complaining that what's her name, the whatchamacallit, the twisting girl.
Oh, Fujino.
Yeah, they must have heard people complaining that Fujinon hasn't had enough screen time because this recent summer event, like the entire final epilogue, the like story scene is just a zero AP event with no battle, which is just the protagonist going on a date with Fujinon for no reason.
But why?
Or because apparently they had a prior agreement to do so, I guess. It was just a throwaway remark when you encounter her in the actual story, where she's just playing the role of a ghost. But, yeah, I guess they decided that Fujinon fans have waited long enough and it's time to give them some fan service.
I see. There ain't
But,
much. I don't. I mean, Fujino's cool. She's a cool villain in Kara no Kyokai, but it's nothing to do with her character. It's entirely how she operates and the story going on around her. It has nothing to do with her as a character. Her as a character is a literal cardboard.
well, yeah, but she does have a backstory and stuff, which is mostly traumatic. Like, I mean, her major crime was being born too powerful, and so her sensation got sealed along with her power. Like her operating and like destroying bridges, as she's so fond of doing, that's her operating with sealed power. So yeah, she was just supposed to be a villain though, really. But a lot of other stuff about who she is has been written in around that after the fact, like the fact that she's a what is it that she's usually described as a masochist because of her disposition where she can't feel anything, but that's sort of like a superficial psychological expression of the fact that she's actually deep down a sadist or something, and her favorite thing to do is to get people to watch horror movies. There's a lot of stuff about her character that's been written in later that doesn't feature prominently in Kara no Kyokai. But to be fair, she probably has more characterization in FGO than she does in the original franchise in which she appears. And she is, like I said, gets a lot of complaints for not featuring in the story very much, although I don't know why. I don't know why people would be so hell-bent on having a feature in the story when she doesn't really have much bearing on it. But she's one of those servants who has been drafted from elsewhere and will disappear entirely as soon as the crisis is resolved. But
yeah. I mean, I like Kara no Kyokai a lot. Toko's my avatar from Kara no Kyokai. I liked Kara no Kyokai before I even had a clue what Type Moon really was. But it's Fujino as a character.
I think me recommending you watch that is actually what originally got you into Type Moon stuff.
I had flipped through the VN before, but I hadn't sat down and done a proper read of it until a bit later. It's hard to keep a time frame on when I watch stuff, when people recommended me stuff, and when it happened, because it's now well over a decade ago that happened.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah, I was never a huge fan of it. There were arcs of it that I enjoyed, but I just remember that I don't remember anything about the last movie because I fell asleep. Because it was nothing but talking. Well, maybe there was stuff that happened that wasn't talking while I was asleep, but there was so much talking that I fell asleep.
Yeah, I don't. Which one was the last movie at the time? Because the epilogue thing came out later. Was that the one with Shiki and Leo having their big final showdown that you were calling the last movie? Or the epilogue that came out years later?
It's not. I'm talking about one which is just basically either Shiki or Shiki expounding at length about stuff that I don't really recall what the topic was.
Oh yeah, that's the other one then.
It was a long conversation, just sort of standing on the road for no reason.
They do that a lot.
Talking and talking and talking and talking. They weren't even walking in circles in a church. That would have been a step up. But, yeah. At any rate, so lots of stuff's happening there. they had a rather extensive Famitsu interview wherein there was a lot of topics regarding the future of FGO that were covered there. But I haven't actually trawled through all of it yet. But yeah, I'm sort of like soothed to know that they aren't planning to just like, you know, take it out behind the chemical sheds and shoot it in the back of the head as soon as Arc 2 is over. Because the fact that that would cause a riot does not actually suggest to me that they wouldn't do it, because they do a lot of things that cause riots, such as their blunder with the rates that they had. They accidentally put one of the banners, the third summer banner, on when it went on to solo rate up. They used duo rate up rates for it, and by accident. So once they realized what they'd done, they shut down the Saint Quartz summoning. But a lot of people had already blown huge quantities of quartz trying to get Dante's. But in the end, within about 12 hours, they'd resolved it and refunded everybody all of their quartz that they had spent on that banner, and let them keep anything that they managed to pull in the meantime, which is the right resolution. But there were an awful lot of people were bracing themselves to like fly off the handle. That they were all ready to fly off the handle at how they were being treated outrageously, even though it was resolved in under 12 hours.
Yeah, like, that's... I would expect a 24-hour time on a boo-boo like that, at least for most companies.
Well, I mean, if it was Blizzard, I wouldn't expect a resolution at all.
Oh yeah, well, Blizzard's a special kind of stupid.
But yeah, it's that whole thing about you don't really want to slaughter the goose that lays the golden eggs. You've got to keep your whales happy. The Saint Quartz summoning is what they make their money from.
Mm-hmm.
If it suddenly becomes an unsafe proposition, or a more unsafe proposition than Gacha normally is, then, well, you're going to have people lose all confidence in spending money on your product. So it behooves them to treat their customers well in this case. There's not even a cynical argument not to. So I'm not quite sure why people were so ready to fly off the handle. Like, there was already a guy who was trying to arrange an open letter, and other people trying to get him to simmer down because it was way too early. There's only been a couple hours. Let them at least find their pants and put them on first, since I presume a lot of them would have been asleep. But yeah. And also, the short-term resolution to that problem was that they switched the Dante's banner out for the Jean Archer and Kirihime Lancer one. So I threw a little bit more quartz at it, and I managed to complete NP5 on Kirihime Lancer at long last. Something that still hasn't been accomplished, wouldn't have been accomplished if we were getting the JP rates, because for Japan, it has been more than 4 years since they had a rate-up banner with Kirihime Lancer on it. Is why I was in such a rush to get NP5, and I spent a lot of quartz on it. I spent about 650, 700 quartz on it to get her to NP5, because I don't know when that banner's coming back again. Might never come back, or it might not come back for 4 years, because we've got a case study to prove that it's so. But yeah, so from one gacha to another, the Pinecone Princess Gala has started in conjunction with the new event, which has also started at the same time. So I managed to pull Nenica fairly quickly, especially compared to my previous pulls, where I've had to get Spark or within spitting distance of Spark before I could get the character. This time I got it in like 90, I think.
Yeah, 90.
It's pretty good.
90-ish. I got her in 120-ish. Abo got her in his free 10 pull.
Well, he's Abo. I mean, he's got to have something. That means that I still have 2+ sparks in the bank going into the lead up to New Year, which leaves it open for me to, theoretically, I could spark both New Year's Yui and New Year's Carol, but I don't know whether or not that's a good idea. I don't know how quickly New Year's Yui gets power crept out, because I know that when I started playing, people were talking about little else.
Yeah,
But I don't know if that continues to be the case or not.
she is always going to be really good because of the nature of her kit, but I don't know if she gets power creep later or not. There might be dudes that come out later that do her job better. I haven't looked much past into the next year. I've only been had my eyes on this year, but the thing with New Year's Yui when you started playing is she was the new hotness when you started playing.
People were seriously talking about little else. Everything online was just people putting videos of them doing stuff using New Year's Yui,
She doesn't
and
enable a whole lot
everybody
of weird
everybody
degenerate crap.
commentating online was also talking about how the game was now different and you needed her or you were behind forever type of thing. You know, the same sort of release hype that every major new character gets.
Yeah, I wouldn't. As usual, I would not put too much stock into the MLG tryhard sweaty pinecone community.
This is what happens when you add a competitive element to a gacha game. The information online suddenly becomes useless. Like in FGO, you can very easily get a barometer for who is currently meta and who is not by looking at how people talk about them online. Because there's a very clear line between people who are talking shop and people who are talking waifu. Like, if a new character is good in a particular mode of play, a particular application, be it farming, be it clearing events, be it challenge quests, that will be made abundantly clear, and any given person can give you at least their take on how that works and why it's important. But in Pinecone, you just hear about how the latest character to come out is the best thing ever and nothing else matters.
Yeah, and most of the time, the best thing ever is it's just the best. This particular set of we're in the phase where like
In this month of the meta.
yeah, we're in the phase that FGO was in for a while, where every time a new powerful character came out, it was called the best thing ever. Like when Scotty came out, she was the best quick servant ever, and you're going to be permanently behind with your quick teams if you don't get her. And
Well, the thing is that that's true. That's legitimately true.
or
But
not
you
not Scotty,
can't...
not Scotty. I meant Skahawk, the original Skahawk.
Oh, right. Right, yeah. No, no. While she still has an important role in certain bosses and challenges because of her ability to kill gods, she's not really very important. Like
Yeah.
I've never really felt pain for not having her. I think there was one challenge quest ever in like a Nero Fest that I wished I had her.
Yeah, and it was but the people were doing the same kind of not as fervently because you get the power creep isn't quite as bad in FGO that at this stage of the game cycle.
I started playing a little while after she was added to the game, so I never went through that particular experience. But I feel like probably people learned a lesson after that, because the next big DPS that had that particular type of air about her in the discussion online was Squirtoria, and Squirtoria is still the premier character of her type, outsleeping single target DPS. Like, there's still nobody better than her, in my opinion, anyway. In fact, that she is so effective that she still makes it into farming compositions which aren't in her niche, because her kit is so good. But you are by no means behind if you don't have her. There are other options that you can take. I don't remember what this does at all. Do anything?
I'll have aggro on him, so I'll have to worry about most of it. Don't stand in yuck.
Right.
And don't stand in the water.
Right.
And I actually have strength this time. But yeah, Pinecone does have one problem that FGO did not have. At least not to the degree it did. Also, Cleanse heavy on me if I get it. And that is one of the classes of types of characters in Pinecone just does not have a very good starting roster, and that's the magic teams. The starting magic teams for Pinecone were really, really weak. Like
it seems like that persisted for a very long time.
Yeah, so anytime any new Magic anything comes out, people are gonna hype it up as the best thing ever, and you're gonna miss out, and it's gonna be game over if you don't get it. Like they're saying the same thing about Summer Carol, but I mean, unique equipments are doing the same thing Summer Carol did. Maybe not quite as good in the numbers, but if you're just playing at the level you're playing, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that the devs are probably quite aware of the fact that they don't want people to just lose faith in the game because of stupid crap people are saying.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean that is a risk. If you let people talk like that, whether it's true or not, if people talk like that too much for too long, people will believe it. I mean, where else are they going to get their information? Not
yeah,
everybody else will know somebody personally that they can talk to about the gacha game to find out what's going to work.
yeah, and
And if every bit of feedback they get is, oh yeah, but you missed the Summer Carol banner, so you might as well not play for the next 12 months. Well, I mean, it's not really favorable for an expansion of the platform perspective for the developer.
yeah. The Pinecone community is at that perfect size where it's just big enough to be popular in its niche, but it's still super niche, and it does not have a ginormous Western player base.
Yeah, it's got like a couple 100,000 people sort of thing on its best day.
Yeah, it just is perfect for cultivating that kind of messy online discussion.
Yeah, and what's more, just a discussion environment where abject misinformation, in the proper sense of the word, can spread very quickly.
Yeah, because there just aren't a whole lot of people to fact check it. The
Yeah,
autist to normie ratio is still the same, but the raw number of autists is lower. Therefore, your chances of getting one of the autists to go, "Wait a minute," is is not very good.
well, the thing is that most of the autists playing the game are probably planting the seeds of poor information to begin with, because the autists that play the game are all like sweaty clan battle people.
Oh, the super sweatiest of clan battle people. I don't know why you would want to be competitive in clan battle because it's just doing.
Autism.
It is a level of autism that I cannot fathom.
Yeah, the thing is that there are some people who have peaktism and they need a game to express that peaktism, and in Pinecone, Clan Battle is a way where you can literally spend your entire life optimizing things in a video game.
And
And because people want things from you, if you're capable of doing that and you're running one of these clans, then you can get people to give you control of their accounts. Like, it's a lot of power.
yeah, it's peaktism, and like the only thing I care about with clan battle is beating Abo. That is my goal every clan battle, and that's as far as it goes.
My goal is to clear the daily every day. Like, that's all.
Well,
And that only requires you to make an attempt.
yeah, that's where I was at when I was at your approximate level to max level ratio. But as soon as I caught up to max level, the goal became beat Abo in clan battle every month just to make him feel inferior.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a meme though that I've seen in the online Pinecone community, which there is a certain amount of truth to it. Like somebody will make a post online asking, saying, "Oh, just started this month. How long is it going to take me to get caught up?" And people will just respond, You don't get caught up in precon. You just don't."
You're not gonna catch up to the autists that have been there forever with every character option ready to go for shards that are spending 20 refreshes a day or whatever insane thing they do. Oh, did you just get Anzudon?
I got Anzud.
Now, imagine that does 80% of your health and damage and still inflicts that stupid vulnerability buff you got. Also, we have no auto healing, so I'm relying on you.
Fine.
Because I really don't want to waste all my sustaining potions. But yeah,
What you bring healers for?
what was I saying about Pinecone? Don't remember where I was going with that. I saw Anzu and Anzu PTSD kicked in. I don't remember where I was going with that, like at all. I'm a frog.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, sweaty clown battle people. They seed the environment with information. It's sort of like the like Bronze 5 guy in League of Legends who's trying to use like counter meta builds from TSM at Bronze 5
Oh,
and doesn't understand why he keeps losing.
yeah. It's that's a pretty good comparison to these types of artists. Golly, just don't pay attention to any of the "you're behind forever" crap. If your goal is just to compete with your friends in clan battle, that's as high as you ever want to get to, you'll be fine. You'll be able to put together a
I
team
will
that can
settle
do
for
it.
not losing every arena fight. Like maybe losing half of them would be fine.
Yeah, Ninika is great because she finally has broken us out of the goddamn stagnant meta my bracket's been stuck in at the very very tippy top of both brackets because it's just Miyako's Kukas and the invincible Kuka.
So I haven't built up my Nenica or my Summer Maho yet because I've got no XP pots because XP doldrums. But it's still been like a rank bonanza for me in arena because people keep trying to use Nenica and putting her in weird teams.
Oh yeah, she has to. You have to be able to protect her. But
It's like they'll put a team. They'll try and put a team together with Nenica, and then my Muimi will just go whomp horizontal slash, and all of their dudes will fall over at once.
and then poor little Ninika's off on her own, about to be run over by a crazy murder hobo and her very enthusiastic idol friend.
It's kind of a mess at the moment. So I'll have to capitalize on it for a few free jewels while I can. But yeah, the event that's come out. I mean, it's basically it strikes me as a marketing event for when the 3 academy girls get added to the gacha.
Yeah, because transfer student Aoi I think is going to be the next one that gets added, and the other girls will slowly trickle in.
Like, I mean, naturally I have a certain amount of affinity for uni, but yeah, it's a fairly unremarkable story about a rampaging plant, as far as I can tell.
Is Uni the bookworm one?
She's not a bookworm. She's like a professor. She's a prodigy, so she's got her doctorate already.
Oh, okay.
Despite the fact she hasn't finished high school yet, she's the 3rd year in high school, but she spends all of her time like thinking about writing theses.
I haven't read the story
Was she
yet.
in the anime? I thought you watched the anime.
No, I haven't watched season 2 yet.
Oh, was she in season 2? Maybe she was in season 2. Anyway, she's notable, and I don't know if it carries through to her story as presented in the game because I haven't played that far through the game story yet. But she's notable in the anime because she manages through like sheer intellectual investigation to uncover a lot of what's going on, or at least hints about what's going on in the setting, just by studying things. So she's viewed, I presumably she's viewed as a threat by the Kaiser for the same reason. But
I've really got to get caught up on my Pinecone main story. I'm several chapters behind in reading it.
But yeah, the event is a very frustrating one for me though, because I went from summer rerun, and in summer rerun it's like, oh, finally I can reasonably fight the very hard boss, because I was able to 2-pass the very hard boss, very nearly 1-pass but not quite. And then this one, which is a new event instead of a rerun, the very hard boss can just execute me. And I got Ari in one ear telling me that it should be easy.
Well, I just
You-
said you could
level
try it.
expansion is not the half of it. Like you just can't see the scaling anymore because you're at the level front.
I all I said was you can try it and see what it's like, and you told me you'd already done it and it didn't go good. It was like, oh, okay. And then I was just working out what the
No, you
what
said
the
you
differences were.
you said you should be able to do it in like 2 to 3, whatever.
Hang on, I'm scrolling up. I definitely didn't say should.
I don't. I'm just going off what I remember, and I had a lot to drink.
Yeah, where was it? It was,
Oh no, you did. You said you might be able to 2 to 3 attempts per day.
yeah, it was
No,
it,
no.
it was a
It would
passing.
the correct number is 20 to 30. You're out by a full order of magnitude.
But yeah, it was a passing thought I had because I was
You
getting
you
hit
need
for
to
so
keep in
little.
mind. You need to keep in mind that the level of scaling has not decreased.
Yeah,
Like
when I say
the rate at which the number of level goes up has slowed down, but that's the only thing that slowed down. The actual power level has continued to advance at the same pace.
the reason I said that last night was because I didn't know what your scaling was. That's why I said you might be able to attempt it. And if for some reason
No,
this
that's not
boss,
my scaling. It's scaling for everybody.
well, yes, I
Everybody
know,
scales at the same rate.
I know. I'm talking in relative to your character level. If the damage was just really low in general for this boss, because I can't tell what its damage is like at lower levels. It hits like a wet noodle on me.
No, I need to progress the amount of time that has passed in between
Now it turns
that
your mage pro
rerun
to
we
get that
just
rage.
did. That rerun that we just did, and that the current event. That's the amount of time of catch up I still have to do.
But yeah, I was the reason I was saying you should attempt it was because if it did happen to be just a wonky boss with low damage, then I was thinking maybe you could put a dent in it. But
Yeah, well, the thing is, I have never seen a boss that was so wonky that made any difference. Like,
I don't know with this game.
I
They
have no
could-
reason to believe wonky bosses exist. Like, I've never seen one before.
Oh, Tower
like,
Luna has all kinds of crazy wonky bosses.
Yeah, the thing is that you're playing at the frontier so that you can tell the difference between bosses that are the same level, but you can't tell the difference between bosses that are at different levels. The difference for me is the opposite. I can tell the difference between bosses that are different levels, but bosses that are above me, I can't tell the difference between them at all because they all just kill me.
Yeah, I was.
So the things that we are blind to are the precise opposite of each other.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying you could take a look at it.
Oh, we got a dream team going on here.
Of the frog
I'm
and the
silenced and
silence.
pacified, and you're a frog.
Yep, it's all good. I'm not gay though. I'm not a gay frog.
You're really going to talk about that, aren't you?
I'm gonna try and weasel it in here somehow. but yeah, but yeah, that's why I said you might try it, and I wrote the idea off when you said you'd already done it and tried to shift the conversation into deciding.
I was getting bullied. I was getting bullied hard, and I'd spent like an hour trying to find a composition that worked. So I was very, very frustrated at the time because you've got to look at it from my perspective. I'd just gone from an event where it was possible to an event where it was comically impossible.
But yeah,
Like psychologically, that just makes no sense.
I just got hit by a really obvious attack.
Oh, that was a circle, was it?
Yes. Oh, there's a horde on this floor somewhere. Oh, I see it.
Yeah, so I don't really appreciate the way the power creep is structured. Like, I know that they want to keep them relevant, but we're talking about I don't lose health fighting the hard boss anymore.
Yeah, it feels like there should be more levels of bosses if they're going to be married to this event structure for a while. That's something I've said in the past, because they just right now the way it is, you go in there, and because I remember when I was at your level, it was poke at the very hard boss and force close the app if it's impossible. And and most of the time I would be in the same boat where, well, the very hard boss is a joke. I can sneeze on it. And I didn't have skip tickets back then, so I had to watch myself all the time on the very hard bosses every single time, or the normal hard bosses, not the very hard bosses. The normal hard bosses, beat them on auto every time, and just get it thrown in my face that, oh, there's literally nothing in between this and very hard. And
The thing is, I went from being able to just barely do the hard boss to the hard boss as a joke in the span of the time between one event and the next event.
Yeah, well, you're near the level cap of what that event was released. I think it was released in the 120s, early 120s, for the last summer rerun.
I don't know.
So,
But the thing is, they also do a whole bunch of other annoying, deceptive things, though, right? Like they add levels to the bosses. Like the hard boss says level 50, the very hard boss says level 90. The very hard boss is not level 90. I'm sorry. The only thing that might tell you is the crit rate. I don't even know if it does that.
Yeah, I don't know how event bosses work when it comes to the janky crit chance that you get, because that's the big thing with bosses in Pinecone is if they're above your level, uh, for every level they're above you, they get an increased chance to crit you, and this gets astronomical as the level difference increases, and you don't want your tanks being crit and auto battler because it will totally screw up your whole plan if your tank suddenly dies, or if one of your random DPS suddenly dies.
Unfortunately, with my embarrassment of riches as far as tanks are concerned, I've spread my resources a bit thin. So my only really well-built tank is Nozomi, and it's only really by my standards, which is pretty weak because I haven't farmed a lot of gear. But you were definitely right that the this event boss really strongly favors Jin and Miyako. Like, it's not even close. They're very, very strongly favored, and it's not just because of their unique methods of avoiding damage either. It's the fact that they sit far enough forward to protect your DPS. If your DPS is Muimi, and a lot of people's DPS is Muimi because she's so effective, she will step in front of Nozomi.
Mm-hmm.
And Nozomi, if you're using two tanks at the front to soak the damage, Nozomi is far enough back that Muimi will end up in position 2 when Muimi attacks.
Yes.
So you can't protect Muimi with Nozomi. Doesn't work.
This was before Eriko became the premier. You got to get this one basic character ranked up to 5-star. It was oh, I'm brain farting on her name. She has tiger knuckles. Starts with a K.
Ari?
Good gravy, I'm brain farting on her name. I don't think it's Kari.
Ari? The Kaon girl?
Yeah, I think it's Kaori. Yeah, that's it. I don't know why her name just left my head. She was the go-to for Muimi's position before Muimi or modern Eriko existed with Eriko's unique equipment. And Nozomi cannot ever tank for Kaori because Nozomi is behind her in the party lineup by default.
Yes, I'm going to have to lean a bit harder into Miyako probably. I mean, she seems to be viewed as pretty much a universal solution to several encounters in the game, so...
Yeah. Her and Kuka are the go-tos if you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't have the resources to build up Kuka, though.
Yeah,
I've got too many things to build up.
I would strongly recommend eventually getting around to Kuka, because Kuka is just a good, I don't know what to do here, and Miyako's melting because it's magic damage.
Yeah, I'd sort of hoped that I could. I was sort of intending, because I had not gotten Kuka, and a ridiculous amount of time had passed, and I had gotten Kuka despite it being 2-star. I was sort of intending to use Pecorine for that, because she's a big slab of hit points. Therefore, it doesn't really matter what type of damage hits her.
The difference is Kuka's self heal is way better, and Kuka has a taunt. And that taunt is what makes her as good as she is, because it's not tied to her UB. It's just a skill she does. And so what this means is in PvE, all those enemies and attacks that get lobbed onto random enemies, for a huge portion of the fight, are getting lobbed on top of Kuka.
Well, since I do have Nozomi built, I do have access to that type of thing.
It's just it's a union burst instead of a skill, so it can get used way less often. But
yeah, tanks don't seem to build up the union burst very quickly.
Yeah, they have a low union burst gain or a high union burst bar. I forget how the math works and what the setup is, because they're always up front taking damage. I guess they didn't want them to always be UBing.
Anyway, that's enough squawking about that. Yeah, I guess I'm in dual saving mode again. We'll see what comes up over the course of the rest of the year before... I don't know what else is scheduled to even come out before New Year's Carol.
Luna's supposed to be really good for PvP, and she's really the only other one, I think. I can pull up the chart.
I would also like one day to be able to kill the dungeon bosses.
What dungeon boss are you at? The third one?
I haven't killed the tower one, and I haven't killed the latest one. You don't have to kill them to move on to the next one, but I can't because I just get ruffle stomped. I haven't made an attempt on the fourth one in a while because I don't want to go down a rank and lose the dungeon coins if it turns out it's a total loss. So I was just planning to like ridiculously overpower it.
Yeah, the current dungeon, its boss is a nightmare.
I've seen people saying it's easy with Nenica.
It might be with Ninika, but before Ninika, yeah, well, actually, yes, Ninika can make that fight hilarious. But okay, my cooldowns are finally back. There we go.
Crap, damn it, balls. That wasn't what I meant to do.
That's not the problem with the boss. The problem is getting enough survivability to stay alive. Because the boss will wipe your team at 20%. At 20% health, your team dies. Or not 20% health. At 20 seconds left on the clock, your whole team dies.
Right. What's the point of having the clock with 20 more seconds on it then?
Because
Can you invincible through it?
Yeah, so the way it does it is it applies a stupidly powerful dot on everybody. And that dot just does like 50% of a character's HP per tick, and it ticks every second. So I have managed to accidentally survive it with overloaded healers when I'm just throwing stuff at it, but it is by total accident, and it was in no way intentional. And I have not been since able to replicate the feat. So, I just got death grip by the Charybdis. But yeah, that's the problem. Is you're going to lose the team you were attacking the boss with. You can't just do a team and recycle it. You could always do the pudding strat on the current boss you're on, where there is a strategy that I used on it actually, where pudding can solo the third dungeon boss. It takes a long time, like 100 and plus attempts, but you will kill it if you set it up so that I think a single character has to die to the boss's Union Burst, and Miyako has to have no Union Burst bar. And then all you have to do is send Miyako in on auto over and over and over again. And if her gear and HP is good enough, and her heal is at a high enough level where she can regain enough health to stay alive, she will solo the boss eventually.
What do we have to do?
Kill the boss. Kill him? Just kill him.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on, because we've harped on about that more than long enough. So what else did I do? I haven't really picked up much in the way of new anime this season still, because I'm basically not trying to. It's depressing. On a sort of like a drunken whim, I watched the new version of Ruby. I don't mean the new seasons, because that story is trash, written by people who
the animated thing.
I watched the Japanese version of it, and it's very interesting in sort of like a how do I say, sort of like an intellectual like looking at it from an intellectual idea, because it's not often that you get the opportunity to see very, very similar material presented in a relatively close displacement in time redone twice. The only other place that you see that usually is Marvel origin stories, which get done over and over again, especially if your name happens to be Spider-Man.
That poor boy. He's had his story told to so many people so many times now.
In that case, usually it's the same people doing it over and over again. But in this case, you've got Rooster Teeth, who, you know, they were trying too hard to make an anime, despite not being Japanese, quite obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got an actual Japanese studio who know what they're doing. and they're using the same material to work with. Like, it's not, oh, well, we've got this. Like, in the case of Spider-Man, let's say, there's sort of a loose mythos of these are the things we know Spider-Man did. We have to tell a story about them.
Mm-hmm.
No, they use, in a lot of places here, they use the same script. Like, it's not the same story because the story is radically compressed. They cut out a lot of faffing about. But they're using essentially the same script. The same events happen in the same order. The same characters are involved, to a point. Not all the way, all the way across, but to a point. But like the first couple episodes, especially, they tell in brief the story up to. I think the story goes up to like all the events that happen are the same up to when they discover that Blake is a Faunus. Roughly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other bits and pieces that are injected in there because the core story that this version of Ruby is about is a different story. It's got a different plot element in there that isn't in the original. That is what drives the story forward. But watching the same material get presented twice is quite interesting. And basically, if you surgically remove Monty from Ruby, and then you look at what is left, you're not left with a very pretty picture, are you?
No.
In fact, you're left with something which is quite hideous indeed.
Yeah.
And very, very bad.
That boy was an animation prodigy.
But fighting animation was the only thing he could do.
Yeah.
Like, all of the other animation that he did is incredibly jank. And this really highlights it, because they have no Monty, and doing the sort of fights that Monty does, using traditional anime technique, would be UFO table plus expense.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not practical at all.
Yeah,
so the fights are nothing like as impressive. However, everything else absolutely leaves Rooster Teeth's work for dead.
Yeah. That's not hard. From what the has come out about the development of Ruby post Monty's death was basically Monty was the only one on that team that did anything, and he worked on the fight scenes most of the time, and was up all night working on them.
You know, I expected it to be better than what Rooster Teeth had done. However, what I did not expect is for any time that I had for the original to be destroyed in retrospect. Like, it's so much better. This new version is so much better in every respect, while using the same characters, doing the same things, and saying the same things. It's just so radically better. Radically better. And most of the stuff that they've clipped out is stuff that in retrospect is very obviously Rooster Teeth trying to be anime-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual anime has removed it and therefore looks a lot more genuine. So you can still tell when you're watching the story that the story was done by a Western studio first. But it looks more credibly like an anime. It behaves more credibly like an anime. And just those same lines being delivered by competent voice actors, rather than, what the early crew was like on Ruby, right?
Oh yeah, it was the in-house people at Rooster Teeth that do Let's Plays in Red vs. Blue.
They're just deeply awful at voice acting.
Yeah, they
And I thought that oh well, it's Rooster Teeth, they can't write for crap and they can't voice act for crap, so maybe it's just all crap. But no, actually, when you put a competent voice actor and competent ADR behind that script, you can still make it do work, even if it's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And they do in the anime reimagination of the story. It actually kind of works. A lot of things that came off as really weird and stilted can actually be delivered well by someone who knows what they're doing and by a director who knows how to use his voice talents. It's kind of interesting to watch. Now, I don't know if I would go so far as to call it good, because it's still Ruby.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how the same material has been rendered so radically different in two different times and places. I mean, from what I hear, Ruby now has descended into being this like weird exercise in wokeitude.
Well,
But
most of their products have at this point. They fired Joel Heyman. Well, he didn't get fired so much as harassed out of the workplace for voting for Trump.
oh dear, there is no greater crime, obviously.
And Joel was the best person at Rooster Teeth in terms of a content creator. He was the funny one. He played Caboose in Red versus Blue.
I see.
This is why everybody loved Joel, because he was the funniest guy there and the only one that could do genuine comedy. If you watch their live action skits, he's the only one that's funny. And
I've never watched anything live action of theirs. I would never have dared.
But it just, if you ever do, if it doesn't have Joel in it, it's terrible. But if Joel's in it, it's actually funny. But they ran him out as their best talent and the most fan-loved talent because he voted for Trump.
Well, I mean, they get what they deserve. Really. I mean, who cares about Rooster Teeth these days?
Joel leaving was the breaking point with me and Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, like there's this tiny contingent of people who are still the Ruby faithful, which just it astonishes me those people exist.
I am, from what I understand, Ruby is kept alive by the porn it produces.
Yeah, much like Overwatch.
Yeah, it's like Overwatch in that way. So
yeah.
it's kept alive by a whole bunch of Coomers.
But if you were willing to give the original Ruby your time and watched it until you couldn't stand it anymore because it was just so grotesque, I think it's worth looking at the anime version just to see what has been done with it, because I like a lot of things about it, like things that were really obnoxious in the original have either been cut or have been reimagined in ways that are they actually can land the line instead of making everybody cringe.
Yeah, I remember when they had the Achievement Hunter guys doing voices for that show.
Like, I know there was a small outfit, but that doesn't make the work worth a damn. I'm sorry.
Like, Rooster Teeth is important in video web culture, I think, for the sheer size it blew up to back in its Red versus Blue days. But all its stuff as it tried to expand and become more corporate just is terrible.
Yeah, there are people who give it the time of day, but I don't really see the reason to do so. But yeah, I feel like this anime is sort of a competent reimagining of it. But I don't know that it's got much value outside of being able to see that contrast.
Yeah, and I don't remember the original
that's what
Ruby
makes
anyway.
it interesting.
I remember nothing about the Ruby story. I stopped watching as soon as Montione passed away. And I don't remember anything of what I did watch.
It just amazes me how close they stayed to sort of like the spirit of the original aesthetic while making everything better. Like, they use the same sort of what would I describe it as? A sort of like aughts punk music aesthetic with the songs, you know, the insert songs, which were sung by people who clearly need vocal lessons.
Yeah.
Like, they use the same style, except the songs are all actually nice to listen to.
Those were also Monty's fault. He handpicked all those. So he doesn't get a pass on those. Those were his fault.
I saw a lot of people commentating about this new anime one, saying that, oh, well, it would be better if they used the original music. No, it categorically would not be better if they used the original music. The new songs are all effectively better versions of the old one. Like, they're not covers of the old music or anything like that. They're original material, but they're just better. They convey the same mood and aesthetic and do it just better, straight up better. And it's sort of very, very strange to watch how much better it is while doing the same thing. And all that really goes to show in the end is that Rooster Teeth, when it comes to doing narrative content, were worthless 2-bit actors who really should have stuck to what they knew.
Yeah, they're Rooster Teeth's Rooster Teeth's peak storytelling, I can't believe I'm going to say this, was back in around season 4 or 5 of Red versus Blue with the Wyoming arc. And that was after that, that was not very good. Let me be clear.
I don't think that you will find very many people who are willing to accuse Red versus Blue of being high art.
It was a cheesy story, but it was really funny and did manage to weave a narrative into it successfully that you could follow that was watchable. And that is peak Rooster Teeth storytelling.
I don't remember anything about Rooster Teeth post Blood Gulch.
This was still Blood Gulch era.
I remember a tank. Like, I don't remember much after the very early episodes. I didn't keep watching it because I felt like it was repeating the same jokes after quite a short amount of time. But
I stuck around for Caboose.
Caboose.
Everybody loves Caboose.
But yeah, it's an interesting anime that I think is worth watching for the contrast if you can remember anything about Ruby, because I mean, like I've mentioned before, like Ruby is in my favorite genre, the sort of the magical academy shonen type story. But
you got a Chimera coming to eat you.
It's such a
Chimera's coming to eat you.
It's such a miserable implementation of that genre in the original material compared to what it could be, because there's a few interesting ideas in there that could be developed by somebody with a sense for how to write something that isn't cringe. But nobody at Rooster Teeth knows how to not be cringe, so... You're a frog.
I am.
Anyway, I'll leave my week there because I don't really want to talk anymore about that.
Righto. Well, most of my week has just been piggybacking off of yours to talk about the stuff we've done together. Or stuff we were both had what you call it's for. What was I doing? Right, I was popping steel. So yeah, my week, I guess, is where we'll just jump right in and get the weeks done, so we can just go into tangent mode. So my work week had 2.5 really, but 3 days of it being a hellish work day, where I came home and died, and it was just terrible. I hated my life, and the opossum was not there for it, and I was actually glad for once. But I had to spend a whole lot of time playing phone and email tag with my suppliers because they're not shipping stuff on time again. There has been another sudden supply shortage that we thought was finally clearing up. No. Joe Biden strikes again.
Yeah, if Biden's in the White House, it's not going to clear up. These things don't just go away on their own.
Yeah. 6 to 8 weeks means 8 to 10 weeks, by the way. The factory is telling me to put 6 to 8 weeks on everything. I'm going to start putting 8 to 10 weeks on your estimated lead time. So yeah, been dealing with that and having to deal with just a ton of customers going, "Where's my stuff, man?" I'll be like, "It's coming. I promise." Just like Lost Belt 7. Ah, there's a T-Rex. But yeah. So I had 2 days of work that were basically free. It was just playing email tag a little bit and having to play the hurry up and wait game and answer the phones. And I came home early those days and forwarded the phones and played Monster Hunter. So that was nice. I desperately needed those days to recoup and realign after being sick all of last weekend and the start of this week. So I got quite a bit of hunting done. As I mentioned earlier, one of those days, well, I was still sick this day. It was Tuesday. It was with Fern. He just kind of showed up out of the blue around 8 o'clock my time, which is prime playing time for me. And I was playing Monhun, and he just got on Monhun, and we open that rage coffer behind me. And then quickly get up here to the teleport pad. And we just kind of did like 10 to 20 hunts, and killed a ton of monsters. And the next day I woke up and my yuck was finally gone, and just went through. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot to talk about with the Monster Hunter that I did do, because all I did was do some of the new afflicted monsters and learn how that mechanic works. There's only one dude in this room. And clean up the follow requests, which I think I'm almost done with. I'm making progress, getting close-ish to done. And yeah, that's really all I did. We kind of there's only so much you can talk about with Monhun. It's more of what we've already been talking about, and if we don't have stories to tell from us playing together, there just ain't a whole lot to add to that, you know. Oh, strength wasn't the one I checked. But
Yeah, I've not really made any progress on it. I haven't been playing it during the week. We played a little bit before the show, but that was basically all that I've played.
Yep. Oh, I'm Manticorn again. Go get that chest behind me, in this room.
Where are all the monsters?
I stepped on the
Oh,
luring.
they're all in this room.
No, I stepped on the luring trap. There was only one in this room. I know I used a flight, but normally we get more than one. I'll try and take it to the next floor, but I don't think we're gonna. I don't think it's gonna make it for very long. But yeah. So you're somewhere in your 20s now in your master rank. I managed to get up to my 50s with the 2 days I played on my own, plus the day I played with Fern. Fern's in his 30s, I think.
Means that you've got access to everybody's favorite monkey.
Yeah, I beat him up. He was a scary monkey, like he always is the first time you fight Furious Rajang in a game.
At least he wasn't afflicted, because it would make him even faster.
Yeah, don't. He's already Super Saiyan the whole time. I don't need a faster Super Saiyan monkey.
At any rate, they're going to be deploying the new content soon. The only monster that they announced was Lucent Nagakuga, so an angrier Nagakuga. But there's also crafting systems coming for adding things to weapons, basically, and to armor. Though the exact scope of what that means is not really very clear, since they've basically just been supplying people with teasers, not with any actual information.
Yeah.
But he is hoping it's not as toxic as some of the RNG that was required for the previous, like, post-end game crafting things, like the Safi Jiva stuff, which was apparently really, really, like, abusively RNG to the point where it would break people away from playing the end game.
Yeah.
Ribbit.
You're a frog. Hopefully, the afflicted system's okay. As a dual blades user for in-game content, it's unfortunately it kind of, other than them having more health, it actually makes some monsters easier for me because I insta heal all that red health that they give you. Any red health you have, I like insta heal it against these afflicted monsters. If I'm sitting on the monster and I'm doing DPS and I'm not getting, bullied, I'm just going to get all that red health back immediately and don't even have to potion. And this is just a quirk of dual blades because of how many dang times we hit. So, yeah, dual blade supremacy. Even though our damage is still, our kill time's still right in the middle of the pack, where they always are.
Well, I don't think that kill times really matter in any special way, because in practice, it's just going to be a matter of are you going to be sweaty or not? Like, anybody can achieve a decent kill time with the sweatiest of strats and the sweatiest of builds, but everybody is middle of the pack when played by a normal person.
Yeah,
generally
I,
speaking.
I was mostly saying that for the memes, but whenever I talk about tiers in Monster Hunter, I don't take tiers in Monster Hunter seriously, unless something's just blatantly busted. I don't generally care about your power in a Monster Hunter game with a particular type of weapon. It just is much of a muchness, and they usually do a good job of making everything usable at least.
Yeah, I think as far as sweatiness goes, I think Greatsword is currently at the top of the pack when you do nothing but like bomb counter, bomb counter, bomb counter, and when you're skilled enough to know exactly when and where to do that on every monster because you've got all of their patterns memorized, you can do these sort of like sub 2 minute kills on everything sort of thing.
Yeah,
But you know, you need to be the type of person that enjoys the absolute mathematical mastery of a fight and isn't really that interested in, you know, looking and feeling cool. Because
basically you need to be
honestly, it's
autistic.
kind of a degenerate way of fighting, really.
Yeah, you need to be a hyper autist to do that, and especially at the level we play, we just kind of bumble our way through.
But yeah, I don't really have any interest in playing like quote correctly unquote. Like I don't even build for damage because I know that I'm just going to clown it up if I do.
Oh, I'm not leaving home without at
Unfo-
least 6 ranks of defense boost.
yeah, like if a monster doesn't kill me outright, a monster can't kill me. Is effectively the way my build is set up. Which is, to some extent also kind of a necessity if you're soloing with two Palamutes instead of using a Palico, because you have no support. You've just got doggos, but I like doggos, so that's fine. But yeah, so I build very heavily leaning in the direction of defense. Like defense is always maxed out, and in addition to that, I've usually got maxed out Divine Blessing and a few other Healy things and Kujala bonus and Malzeno bonus and so on. So once a monster gets broken on a part that I've got easy access to, I can basically refill my health anytime I want. But yeah, it's my preferred way to play because once I have a comfortable level of durability, who's this guy? I don't remember seeing him before.
He's a rare spawn.
Once I have a comfortable level of defensive stuff, then I can just try fighting using whichever method that I want. And I'm currently learning using the Golem Blaster, which is the Garen Golem heavy bowgun, which is basically this huge, enormous four-barreled shotgun. It's very fun and satisfying to use, but you also can't hit broadside of barn unless you're literally rubbing up against the monster. And even though I've dramatically supplemented all of my weapon stats with decorations, it still scatters all over the show if you try and fire it even at middle range. So it's very fun to use because it's a finicky weapon that doesn't want to do what you want it to do. But when you do get right into that wonderful position where you end up with fights like the one we had against the Tetranodon that we fought today.
Oh, where he just gets bullied.
Yeah, he just got completely bullied. Because you can just, you knock him over and then you fill his face full of lead. Then you knock him over again. Like, every time he gets down, I can usually, spit out several thousand damage on him. Because it's just an ideal situation. But there's still a lot of stuff that I haven't really learned how to do with the weapon yet. Like, I haven't really been integrating crouching shot because doesn't seem to work that well for me for whatever reason. The wind-up is so slow, but I see people using it, so there must be good ways of using it.
Yeah, the discussion I've seen about heavy bowgun, which ain't a lot, but people seem to love crouching shot and think it's like the best thing ever.
Yeah, but I don't. But maybe it's because I'm a great sword user and charged shot is the great sword way. So, I don't know.
Stay on the boss and throw heals out, and I'll deal with all the mechanics. Do not AoE.
Alright. I forgot that I had AoE actually, so... But, yeah, people like crouching shot. I don't like it so much because it just seems to be a little bit you find yourself vulnerable so often as it is on heavy bowgun that adding extra vulnerability to the way you play doesn't seem like a wise approach to the to playing the game, to be quite honest. But yeah, I'm having fun with the heavy bowgun still. It's probably still the least played weapon in the game. I expect. I think something like 3% of the player base actually uses it, like ever. But I think it's quite fun to use, and I especially like the new counter moves. Like, although it very rarely seems to work for me because the monster immediately starts to fail to cooperate as soon as it can smell a counter on the wind. It's very satisfying when it does work, and it gives you a defensive option for a weapon that is very firmly rooted to the ground, much like the great sword.
All it seems to do is make the monsters miss you.
Yeah, I mean, at least you don't lose any health, I guess, in that scenario.
I guess that technically counts as a defensive option.
But yeah, it can be a bit janky at times, but I still enjoy doing it. I still don't agree with some of the decisions that were made about Greatsword. Like, I still use Greatsword a lot, and Surge Slash is growing on me. I think that I prefer the original way that Greatsword works, but the environment is balanced around wire bugs now, so I'm not really that sanguine about it, to be honest. But I don't. On the one hand, I like strong arm slash because it gives you a counter option, which I like for the same reason that I like it on the heavy bowgun. It's a very slow weapon where you're not going to be able to get out of the way, so you need a way to weather the damage, and that's fine. Like, it's fine that you've got a counter, but the reality is that that counter is so strong that the entire greatsword gameplay, if you're looking at wanting to do good damage, revolves around just using it all the time. Like, that's where the bulk of your damage on that weapon is located now. So, yeah. And, like, playing a classical true charge slash approach without exploiting counters every chance that you get doesn't really work very well against afflicted monsters because afflicted monsters are so fast. Like, it used to be you could sort of play circling around you and the monster could circle around each other and sort of feel each other out, and then you would clash, and then you would do your damage with your true charge slash, and then you would separate again, and that was the way that your combat used to work back in World a lot of the time. You would look for your opportunities and then get in on them, and then get out if those opportunities closed up. Now you don't look for opportunities. You just look to stand in a place where you're going to get hit, and then counter, and that's the gameplay of the great sword. You just counter all day, every day, because doing your defensive option is also your maximum DPS option now, and that seems a little bit perverse as far as incentives go. Like, I still use it because it's a defensive option, but since I'm currently mostly been playing Surge Slash, it's not really that much damage. It's not like huge amounts of damage, and Surge Slash is just the better option for the style of fight that afflicted monsters create. Because the most notable thing about afflicted monsters by far is when they're roided up, they move like greased lightning.
Yeah.
So.
And their stupid curio balls that always hit me. Not the explosion. I can usually get away from that, but I forget about the balls.
Well, I mean, in those last couple of fights that we did before the show, we saw those curio balls like one time across 2 fights.
Yeah, we did have a ton of uptime on poor Tentrodon and Axon. But they are Tentrodon and Axon. Or whatever the stupid chicken's. I've always called it chicken, and I know its name starts with an A.
It's Agnosom.
There you go.
But I presume that the balls just don't go off if you can keep on top of the sparklies enough.
Yeah, I don't know if you can if you have to damage the sparklies or if it's just damage to the monster that can eventually turn the curio off and make it not do the explosion. But
I thought you had to snipe the body part they were attached to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm already strong.
That was the impression I got anyway.
You can
I
strong.
don't know if it's strength. Strength.
Be strong.
Yeah. I mean, I remember
we
seeing
can move
people
on.
talking about sniping body parts for afflicted monsters. So that's what I thought that meant.
Yeah, well, you do get the burst of damage if you bust the thing. So if you're
Yeah,
just
right.
trying to kill the thing quickly, yeah, hitting them glowy spots is good.
Yeah. Well, especially considering how much health those things have. What did you say that one that Ibushi we fought was 83,000 and afflicted ones are like a tier above in terms of the amount of health that they've got.
The Ibushi had 83,000 with all the bonus help you get for the Ibushi fight, and afflicted Agnesam had 64,000 HP for 2 players.
Yeah, so he's like a little raid boss. And he's like the stupid bird.
Yeah, they have a ton of HP. It took me 40 minutes today to kill a Rakakadachi, regular one, not a Magnum one, just a regular ass spider.
Yeah, Ragnakadachi is one of those. No, that's not what it's called. I can't remember. The spider is one of those fights that for me always goes either really well or really poorly, and there's no middle ground. I don't ever have a normal fight against them. Either I bully the crap out of it and it barely manages to even attack me, or it bullies the crap out of me and I barely manage to attack it. There doesn't seem to be the average fight doesn't seem to exist for me.
Yeah. So I did finally find a website with a decent. I'm going to turn to a Manticore. Open that chest once I do. There does seem to be a nice website out there that actually lets you search by alphabetical order in a quick scrolling drop down menu.
Pox on the Fixture Life.
So this is just a little GitHub project that somebody put together that just has all the data you could want on a monster when you go to hunt it. And if you're playing...
In my experience, all of the comprehensive information about games is found on GitHub. It's a question of locating it.
Yeah, I don't remember how I located this one. I was frantically searching for anything that was searchable for quick access to monster weaknesses, because I play dual blades. I have to have the monster's weakness equipped. Like, that's just the end of it.
Yeah, because it's Element or go home with dual blades at the moment. It seems everybody's playing it Element style.
Yeah, so we're back to Monster
Can
Hunter.
you play dual blades raw? Is that like an option you have?
Yeah, it was optimal in Original Rise. Not in World. In World, it was go Element or go home as well. But in Sunbreak, it is back to the World style of you need to have the monster's weakness. But the problem is, on the Switch, it takes rucking ever to open up that stupid menu to go to the Hunter notes and scroll down slowly and try to remember approximately when you first encounter the monster. I'm gonna make sure the Horde wasn't in that room we were just in. Scroll down very slowly, find the monster, go to the weaknesses tab, and see which spot has a weakness to what element and how much it gets it. And it doesn't tell you how weak it is when it's enraged, or if its elemental weaknesses change, or if you got to worry about anything. None of that crap's in the notebook. And
well, I mean, Monster Hunter's famous for its lack of documenting things.
And I just don't feel like memorizing every single monster's weakness. So I need to have that information handy. And this website also just happens to show the HP and the wound/sever portion of limbs that are breakable, and how much HP of damage you need to do to those. And it's really nice. The only quirk about it is sometimes it'll say, like, head break ×2 on, like, Pteranodon, but what it actually means is head and belly. They're just, because it's an automated thing, it detects the hit zone of the head and the body wonky, and the guy has said that's going to be a problem for a little bit until he gets around to fixing it. I'm going to turn to a Manticore.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of there's something a bit more enchanting to me though about that world where everything was like communicated by word of mouth, or and you had to discover these things, and the knowledge was a little bit more arcane. It was like World of Warcraft before Quest Helper and before everything was well documented on Wowhead, where the best you could hope for was to wade through the zesty clan meat on Thoughtbot.
Yeah, and that's nice and all, but I'm not scrolling through Monster Hunter UI to go find a monster's weakness every single time we find a monster.
Yeah, but the thing that I'm getting at is more about the effect that data mining has had.
Yeah, I understand that feeling.
Like even though you did play on the PC with mods, you still knew that there's sort of a line to draw where if you cross it, you're almost not really playing the game anymore.
Yeah, one of the mods I had installed had the option to put a monster health bar on the screen and show all the part health bars on the screen, and tell me how much I was doing every single time I hit it. If
You're
I
just
want,
moving incrementally further towards being an Ubisoft game.
yeah, and I drew the line at not turning on any of that crap in a hunt. I did keep that mod installed though, for the simple reason that whenever you went back to home base, it would alert you when the heck all your crap was done, because there was so much random crap you had to check in world when you got back to base.
Yeah, like your trees and your Argosy and all that crap.
And
Your meldings.
and the stupid Steamworks.
All right, that mini game. Was there actually a logic to that? Like, I was never able to determine if
No,
there wasn't.
no, it was totally random. It was according to the
Okay,
community.
so I wasn't just a baddie. Because
No.
everybody had their Onyxia Deep Breaths More theory about how to win big on Steamworks.
Yeah, the data miners worked out. It has, for all intents and purposes, a random pattern.
Yeah, I know that the odds on that by the next generation, provided that provided that we aren't having World War III, and that I am not in a country that is so deep in depression that I have to spend all my money to try and get bread, or that like if the world stays roughly at the same level of prosperity that it is now, and I can actually get another graphics card, I'm pretty sure that by next generation I'll be sort of obliged by the people around me to play on PC. But I don't really like the environment that much where everything is like about mods. Like when I see people's reactions to the return of melding in Rise and Sunbreak, a lot of people wanted it to be done away with for Sunbreak for whatever reason, and people saying like, oh well, I mean, what's even the point? You should just play on PC and use a mod to get the best.
Just the randos join? Uh-oh.
Oh dear, I've lost my connection to Ari.
Yeah, we got another Domo Arigato moment. It's showing green again. I don't know how true that is.
Okay, well, we'll forge onward in the assumption that everything is not going to fall apart.
Yeah. So yeah. There's people joining multiplayer hunts.
Where is the hard line on that continuum? Like that's why when modding opens up this sort of weird Pandora's box, where maybe you can draw some sort of like pseudo ethical line in what you're willing to do, but when it's like, oh well, I'll just select to have the game give me all of the best gear that I want. Like, where is the line between that and just giving every monster one hit point?
Yeah, that's a decision you got to make as a player, and you got to have the willpower not to use any of them modded power tools to make your game experience totally ruined. And that's up to the individual. That's all on you. You.
Yeah, I mean, but that's part of the reason why I have this sort of irrational affection for the console version with all of its warts and problems, is that everybody's playing the same game. When you talk about some experience that you had with Monster Hunter on the PS4 or the Switch or whatever, you know that the person you're talking to if they were playing on that version, had a roughly analogous experience. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, I never had that problem of having to discover that because the mod told me. Or, oh, well, yeah, I never had to farm for that because I just used the mod to give it to me. After all, it's just about time investment, right?
Well, it's yeah. When it's when it comes to discovering stuff on your own, it for me at least it would depend on what you're talking about, because Monster Hunter is really obtuse.
Yeah, well, I don't expect everybody to like create their own table of what the resistances are on each part to each element. Like, I'm not talking about that, but there are certain things that it's like, well, finding out which parts of a monster can be broken. I'm not talking about remembering which parts of a monster that can be broken, but finding out which parts of a monster can be broken feels like it should be a community effort, not something that somebody will run a piece of software to do eventually.
Yeah, I don't. Holy crap! Did you find a learning trap?
Yes.
I'll bust the auto turp it out. I'll try and save you, but I'm blinded at the moment, so I'm not hitting anything.
I keep pressing the wrong button, and so I have healed a lot instead of doing anything productive.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna solve this problem. There we go. Problem solved.
And you got the witching back.
Yep. But yeah, it's I in when I modded World, what I modded specifically were fix the Neanderthals, fix the hair. Go, we're doing the rage thing again. Manticore time. So fix hair and Neanderthal look. Run a debugger that cuts a whole bunch of junk code out that just made loading times worse. There's apparently a ton of junk code in that game. And there's a mod specifically just to turn all that crap off to make the game load faster. And running the reminder mod to pop up and tell me when stuff was ready at the base. Because that's just stuff I'll forget. And it's just upkeep that is extra brain space.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can get out of the code that I think, like, when I was learning to farm Nergigante, like, it's very important, especially if you're a great sworder, to develop a feel for, okay, I've hit him about X many times doing about Y much damage. That means that if I hit him Z more times, it's going to cause him to stagger and give me an opening. Like, that's a sort of knowledge that you develop over the course of farming, and it applies to any monster, right? Mm-hmm. But I expect that there are mods now that will just tell you X damage left to stagger.
Oh yeah, that same mod, that reminder mod, the Hunter Pie mod, that tells you everything about a monster, and you can turn on as much of it as you want, and it will tell you absolutely everything about the monster. It will tell you which part is currently working its way towards broken, how much more damage each part needs until it flinches. You can set it up to tell you all this information however you want, in all kinds of configurations and skins. So if you want to, you can totally take the mystery out of the game if you just want to Timmy Power Gamer it.
But does that really feel like you're on a monster hunt then? Maybe other people don't value that, but like it feels like you're acquiring knowledge as you go through the process of farming a monster and getting better at fighting it, and you get a better sense of like what you're doing when and what your timing is like and how the monster's going to behave, how weak is he going to be after fighting him in this way for this amount of time. Like that developing that knowledge feels like part of the joy of learning the game.
Yeah, it's
And why would you cheat yourself of that?
I don't.
It's like, to get gear quicker? To get gear quicker to do what?
Yeah.
It's like the people who complain that, oh, well, like in World of Warcraft, the old saw was always, oh, well, it's not fair that Mythic raiding is the only place to get Mythic gear. It's like, but what do you want the Mythic gear for? You want the gear easy from Mythic without having to do Mythic, but the gear only exists so that you can do Mythic.
Yeah, it's just I don't think people think about it that hard. I think they just see the best thing and want to have the best thing.
In order to do what? Like
There is no there is no more
you
to it.
prop yourself up constantly using mods so that you can move forward in the game, and then when you move forward you get a bigger challenge, and then so you use even more drastic mods to undermine that challenge so that you can get gear off that farm so that you can do the next challenge along, which you will then undermine. Like, what a waste of time.
Yeah. That said, all that said, I still much prefer playing on PC because if you do,
My.
oh yeah, I used an alteration. Oh, that's a treasure room that turned into a mimic room. Hang on,
I don't want to go in there.
I'll fix it.
There's a lot that can go wrong in a room like that.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get. Oh, I'm dying. Heal me. Oh, we got a raising. No, we don't. That's a lie. Oh, they're all coming to eat you. Run. Flee.
You keep moving out of range.
I know. I was trying to dodge their stuff and go smack ones in the back. Okay, we'll have to use 2 purities, but the problem has been solved. There are still 2 more in here. We did not even get them all. Okay.
Right, which one's purity? Purity is this that one. Okay.
Yep. Second row. Now, how many of these are going to be mimics? Treasure room full of mimics. I love those. I got the rage back.
Yeesh.
Okay, so that was a derailment.
Anyway, it's probably about time we moved on to another topic. Did anybody check the email box? By anybody, I mean, did you check the email box?
I did not. I was setting up the rig. That's okay. I'm going to put emails on hiatus for this, I think, because I can't actually open it to check it.
Right, I mean, I could, but Fern's not here, so...
Yeah, so we're going to wait. We're not going to do it this week. We might do them next week. If there's any, we'll catch the backlog next week, and emails will be back in full swing when Fern gets back. Because yeah, it's just kind of the way it do. But yeah, what was I closing on? I was going to close out Monster Hunter with this. I do prefer playing on PC because if you do have the willpower to resist turning on all that crap, having the nice handy little reminders to get around Monster Hunter UI development and Monster Hunter Neanderthal characters is very nice. It makes the game way better.
My objection to it is not, like, I have no questions about my willpower. Like, I ascribe to a lot of very obscure, no longer maintained by most people, religious precepts that that require me to do things that sometimes aren't that pleasant, that other people don't bother with. So I'm used to the idea of having to maintain very clear boundaries around things that I do. The issue is, with me, is that when you're playing with a group of people, it's not you that has to resist, it's everybody that has to resist. Because as soon as one person breaks the seal, no longer are you playing the same game. Mm-hmm. You're now playing different games. All it takes is one person to have a different line in the sand than you, and it can cause problems. Because suddenly, oh, well, they're just playing this different game. And if you are playing with them, you've got to now play around what they do.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate there. I think you, me, and Fern are about on the same page with mods on PC for things like Monster Hunter.
But what I mean really is not that I think that our particular group are going to have a problem so much as philosophically this is the problem.
Yeah.
This is sort of like a philosophical problem that, oh, well, you are not actually just concerned about your own willpower. You have to be concerned about does everybody agree with me? Because if they don't in your particular circle, then you can't have a meeting of the minds on the way the game should be played. And the console environment simply makes that no longer an issue.
Yeah.
But it's got so many other issues that come with it.
You can't make yourself not a Neanderthal on console, though.
Yeah, you've got to look unga bunga. That's your only choice, is the unga and the bunga. Because, I mean, I've been through this before, right? In a different context. It was Borderlands 2. So, in Borderlands 2, it's, it's a looter shooter. So, normally, your power level is affected by what and how much you farm. And I was playing it with some people. There was, if you recall, in Borderlands 2, a chest that was opened by special golden keys.
Oh, and people could just hack in golden keys.
But you could just edit your INI file and give yourself as many golden keys as you wanted.
Yeah,
and there were people I were playing with who just took the logic, this is a game feature, so I should exploit it as much as I want. And so I would go away from the game, and I would come back, and they were one-shotting everything in sight because they'd just fired the system up ad nauseum until they had mathematically optimal weaponry for whatever they wanted to do. And I was no longer playing with them because my contribution to any fight was trivial. By the time I could kill one guy, they would kill everything else involved in combat. Because their outlook on the way a game feature should be used was different to mine. It was just, it's in the game, therefore it is right and proper to exploit it. And I can't say that they are necessarily wrong in some objective fashion, but
it's a matter
that I couldn't play with them.
It kills the spirit of the game when you do stuff like that to me. And it's a very vague term to use, I know, but I don't have a better way to describe it. Like, there's a game here. This game is clearly meant to be played in a very specific way. Well, not a very specific way, but within its boundaries. And going outside those boundaries to circumvent the ways that you play the game is not in the spirit of the game you bought to play. You're now playing something else.
Yeah, but the analogy here is that the mistake was not the other person's willingness to abuse the system. It was the inclusion of a system that subverts the game intent to begin with. That was the mistake. Like, why was that in there? It was for making money, because it was a marketing tool. So essentially that chest was in there for making money. But that chest was to do the thing, the purpose of the chest was to do the thing that playing the game does, which is to get loot. And so rather than playing the game, people accomplish the objective by simply opening the chest over and over again. And then they wonder why they got bored with the game.
Yeah. Alright, this guy.
I don't remember him. I fought him twice before, I still don't remember.
Stay roughly in the middle of the room, so when the ads spawn, they come together towards the middle of the room. When they do, I'm going to turn into an angel, and I'm going to kill the ads, and then I'm going to destroy their corpses. Other than that, don't stand in anything this guy does. He eventually starts adding Doom mechanics to it.
Righto.
We have a raising for one boo-boo. I need to strength, otherwise the angel won't one-shot the ads. Okay. You can lust if you want to.
Where is my... Okay.
Alrighty, pull and boost. The only boost that requires thought for a little bit, just because I gotta be on point with my marker placement for my ground targeting placement on a controller. There it is. Turn into an
I don't know what the damage numbers in here are like. Should I be unlusting as soon as he's got his 5 stacks?
Yeah, as soon as he's got 5, suck you bitch and heal me. Because I forgot to pop a sustaining potion. I'm going to attempt to just stay an angel. This doesn't work solo because I have to heal, but since I got a pocket healer, I might be able to ride 2 angels through 2 summon phases. Or 1 angel through 2 summon phases, I mean.
Oh boy.
I don't think I'm going to get it unless he does. There it is. I might get it. He'll be cutting it close. No, I'm not going to get it. I don't know. Yep, I'm not an angel anymore. I gotta be an angel again. Oh crap, I'm gonna eat this one in the face.
Riveting conversation.
Yeah,
Full
sorry.
of just dead air.
Gotta focus on this one.
Oh, the Lord. I hope he knows his name is not very cool.
He has a very funky beard.
Is it worth reapplying the debuff?
No. Once he does the next Summon Darkness, we can go back into autopilot mode. There it is. Last angel. Oh, don't want to get hit by that. No, these guys are going to beat on you for a sec. And are we in the clear? Did I get them all? Yeah, got them all. Okay, we are in the clear. Okay, so now we're back on autopilot mode. So yeah, sorry about that. Got to focus for that little bit because it has actual mechanics that if I screw it up, we wipe. Not hard mechanics, but ones that I need to do right, and I can't walk and chew bubblegum.
Indeed. So what other topics have we got on the docket?
I will tell you when I'm not killing boss. I got a tab in Discord to check.
I have Discord, but I'm on the wrong channel. So.
Hang on. If the boss wasn't chain casting Doom on near us, I would just tab over. I'll risk it.
Oh crap! I keep forgetting to draw cards. I'm almost out of mana on an Astrologian.
So we can pseudo segue, disjointed segue off from what you were talking about in your week. There's a bunch of other Type Moon announcements as well. With the big one being the stuff coming out for the new Melty Blood. Specifically, as free DLC, Mash and Neko Arc have been confirmed.
As though there was ever a chance Neko Arc wasn't going to be in there.
We all knew she would come eventually. I'm glad she's free, though, because Neko Arc in Melty Blood is kind of, you kind of need her there.
Yeah, well, it's part of the whole experience. It would seem cynical if they had kept her out, but there's a strong commercial argument to make Mashu free as well, because if everybody sees her on their roster, then there will be a certain portion who will wonder where she comes from.
Yeah, and it'll also draw in the FGO fans who are like, "Oh, I know Mash."
Yeah, so it's a strong commercial argument for them to be free. So in both cases, it was in their interests for it to be a free product.
And their previous DLC characters, I think all of them are now free. They were time limited purchasable, but they made them free eventually. I think they're all free currently. So French Bread in general is a good company. I am hesitant to say I support any company these days, but insofar as I'm willing to say a company is a good company that I put my trust in, French Bread's pretty on it right now.
Yeah. They haven't done anything that I think is especially scandalous, which these days is quite unusual.
Yeah, they're a very tiny company. So yeah, ooh, Mega Sparkles. What'd I get?
I'm not sure if that's enough to get me to play a fighting game, but
it is Type Moon.
I'm not. It is true. I'm not the hugest Mush fan, but
wait till they find a way to squeeze Sabai into it.
Is she not already in there?
No, the only other non-Sekihime crossover character they had was Ryoga Shiki made a guest appearance as a traveler from another universe in Actress Again.
there's a trailer in FGO. Like, it plays before you do the crossover mission.
Yeah. Oh, in which one?
In FGO, there's a trailer which shows Saber fighting against Ark in Multi-Blood.
Maybe. Oh, wait. Yeah, she is in the game. I'm totally just having a brain fart.
He was like, what was he talking about? Like,
No,
I thought I was mistaken because I've never even played the game.
No, I'm just having a brain fart.
This has been the worst batch of sacks I've ever gotten.
Mine was pretty bad too. Most of it's going to the. It's all elegant armor pieces that won't sell for anything. It's going straight to serpent seals.
Yeah, I got a similar thing. Plus, of course, sparklers. I got a clear demi materia, which is not nothing, and another wind up eater.
Yeah.
Which is the biggest disappointment to come out of such a bright sparkle.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Saber's totally in the game.
yes, I thought so.
I just had a mega brain fart for a minute.
Yeah, it's what the thing is that it's just that, like, when you take on board a fighting game, especially if you're not good at fighting games, it's taking on board a large project that will give you very little in the way of positive feedback until you're actually good at it. Because mostly you'll just get teabagged by anyone and everyone that you play. So yeah. it's not like the sorts of games that I usually play, slow-paced games like MMOs or things like Monster Hunter. You accrue power and progress incrementally over time, and you can see the bars filling up as you go. In a fighting game, you are either good in getting good in not getting teabagged, or you're bad in getting teabagged. Those are the two states of being. So it's a little bit hard to latch onto unless you're really committed to the idea of making it a project to not be bad at it.
Yeah. I find at some point it eventually, right at the point where I didn't have to think at all about motions anymore, and could just start associating the name of the ability in my brain with the action I wanted to perform, and the inputs required were just automatically filed into do a dragon punch, and I did not have to think about those anymore. That's when jumping from fighting game to fighting game and playing them casually with people got a lot easier. But it took me forever to get to that point. Because as long as you got the move...
That's what I mean about it being a huge project. Because you've really got to commit to it and stick to it for a long time.
Yeah. And if you want to actually compete in a fighting game, you have to get good at that specific fighting game, which takes hours and hours and hours of practice. And I never do training room. I just don't do it. I will go beat up Sleeper Abu or somebody in casual matches to learn combos.
I don't know if that sounds like a positive thing. It sounds like you're using people as your punching bag.
I mean, they're both very good punching bags. They seem to take it pretty good, and those punching bags hit back.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to take that on, because when you're not good at any fighting games, you have to take on fighting game as a genre first before you can become good at any particular one, because the mindset required is entirely different from every other type of game.
Yeah, it's until you get over the input hump that you can't really attach to them. But the second it just becomes, this character has this move that I can do, and that's as far as you think about a character's moveset, instead of thinking, oh, this character has this move on a dragon punch, this one's on a reverse quarter circle, this is half circle, back to forward. When you just stop thinking about all that and don't have to process it anymore, is when I finally started to enjoy fighting games. But it took forever to get to that point. And if Sleep didn't always want to play them back in BTW days, I never would have got there. Because he always wanted to play new fighting games, but he had been playing them before and I hadn't, when I first started really, really getting into them. And because he always wanted to play, I just had enough time put into the genre by the end of me playing games with him that I finally got over that input hump. And at that point, fighting games became a lot more fun. So yeah, that's Type Lumina. Was there any other stuff with Type Moon, or was that those the only big announcements that are worth mentioning? Pickle. Uh oh.
LOL.
So, my Discord sound driver has a shoe with Final Fantasy, where sometimes
I see.
it will just stop. Now, OBS is still recording my voice fine. They still heard me do my little talk about everything. You didn't though, and I didn't
Right,
hear
so it'd be hard for me
anything.
to bounce off that.
And I didn't hear a thing you said because it doesn't let me hear or say anything. It doesn't tell me anything's broken until I don't hear anybody saying anything to me for a while. And it only is Final Fantasy that causes this. And I've not identified what causes the problem yet with Final Fantasy.
Well, I can't say I've encountered such an issue.
A few other
Although I have had similar issues in the past, but I don't know how I resolved them.
Yeah, I got rid of Run a Lighthouse today for our Alliance raid roulette when I was doing roulettes with Avo, and I was getting chain DirectX 11 errors again, despite fixing the clocking issue on my GPU. But yeah, I was explaining to them about the input hump and stuff, but since I've already done it once.
My concern is whether or not I was talking over you.
Oh, they can't
Because I
hear.
don't know what got fed through to you.
No, they can't hear you. They heard nothing from you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they just heard me.
I didn't know if
monologuing.
it was something when you were saying it was about Final Fantasy. I was like, oh no, did it just cut off his ability to hear me? But I'm still going through as far as the OBS is concerned.
No, the OBS is concerned about what's coming through my speakers, and you were mute
Right.
because it wasn't accepting or transmitting to Discord. Yeah, and it just does that sometimes. So, to the listener, everything's okay. They just had a long monologue from me. Anyway, that's all the Type Moon stuff, really, that's worth mentioning, I think. Let's take a look at some of these other topics we got.
Ugh, I get depressed every time I see Diablo Immortal news. Especially since they got their release in China.
Yeah.
It's like... That just means that all of the potential that it had to teach them a lesson has now been reversed instantaneously, and they now have perverse incentives only again.
Yeah, Blizzard's dead. I mean, they're not going to learn a lesson, even if they could, is what they've demonstrated in the past. And while the Dragonflight Simps may be singing its praises, it's still a piece of trash from what I've seen.
Oh, frustrating. I don't know why I watched that content, and that was so up on their high horse about it as well. Like, they are assuming... It's actually very frustrating watching otherwise reasonably intelligent people just spout the most puerile garbage about how, oh well, they're not in the alpha, they're hating on it because they're accustomed to hate on it. And to be fair, Blizzard has made them accustomed to hate on it with their poor performance, but they just don't really know what it's like. And I'm like, have you idiots not been watching anything that has been happening for the past goodness knows how many months now? What you know is that Blizzard has no positive incentives anymore.
Yeah.
They cannot make good content, and they cannot sustain good content. What your actual experience does not matter because it will not last. Because this is about incentives. Their current incentive is just to get you back in the game. It is not to keep you there, it is to make money off of you. Nothing has changed. It doesn't matter how good they think the content is. It doesn't matter how good the direction feels like it might be in the future. None of that crap matters. What matters is their commercial incentives. Their commercial incentives have not changed.
Yeah, they are a full corpo, no heart in it business now. And you just I think it's time to just write off all Blizzard products. I'm not.
All of these people, they spent the last year or whatever giving Shadowlands the drubbing that it so richly deserved, and they gave Diablo Immortal the drubbing it so richly deserved. But as soon as Dragonflight comes along, they're like, oh no, but this feels good. No, but they're making positive changes. No, but this. No, but that. It's like, have you not walked this path before?
Yeah, it's just addiction. They're just
It has
addicts.
to be. It has to be. And they're always the ones talking down on other people. Oh, you're a mono gamer. Oh, you're just an addict. Oh, you're doing all of your reasoning is enslaved to the fact that you don't understand how these psychological tricks they're playing on you work. Well, I'm above all of this. No, no, you're not above all of this. You are the most in-deep victim of them all. The one who has come up with the most complicated and the most rigorous excuses for you not being addicted.
Yeah, it is.
And your proof that you weren't addicted was going and playing Final Fantasy for a year. And then the moment Dragonflight came calling, you were back in there, you've forgotten Final Fantasy existed. And it's not like I'm trying to stand for Final Fantasy and want people to only play Final Fantasy. It's just the example that is appropriate because all of them dipped into Final Fantasy and then dropped it like a hot rock when Dragonflight came out, despite the fact that, as far as I can see, they haven't done anything interesting. The most, if you were going to take it in a completely even-handed, let's consider the past a black box we won't look at, we won't consider past performance any kind of indicator of future performance at all, we will just factor that out entirely, then what they have produced is something banal and unremarkable. It's not bad and it's not good. They think it's good because they've been playing Shadowlands.
Yeah, well,
Like it's like when you're comparing an extremely brightly coloured and shiny polished turd to the steaming feculent pile of garbage turd that you had before, maybe you can't see that they're both turds, but they're both turds. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's a mess with Dragonflight stuff, and I mean, this Diablo Immortal news I actually linked was it made $100 million because it got the approval in China.
Yeah, I mean that was the way it was always going to be because that was the only thing they intended. They
Yep.
weren't planning to make their fortune off of the Western market. If they did, that was a bonus. But
Yeah.
yeah, the people don't seem to be understanding that nothing has changed about Blizzard. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
It's not since everybody woke up and smelled the coffee that actually Blizzard is an evil corpo. Like nothing has changed since that discovery. Just because Dragonflight Alpha is out and there is a whole bunch of people shilling for it doesn't mean that Blizzard's incentives have changed at all.
Yep.
It just doesn't. It's like expecting the next Marvel movie to be good because they said, okay, we've learned our lesson. When whichever when Morbius was garbage or whatever. Like no. It's the same that the DC have been saying lately that oh no, we're going to focus on quality over quantity because we've seen that trying to follow Marvel and producing quantity is not going to work. It's like you say that now, but you greenlit a whole bunch of garbage nobody cares about at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not believing you. Like nobody actually wants you to do another Flash movie or whatever. Nobody asked for that because your movie's garbage. So like just because a corpo says they've learned their lesson, that doesn't supply you with any reason to take them seriously.
I think the far more interesting thing with this phenomenon when it comes to the Dragonflight people that went and played Final Fantasy like your Beliars and your Breaches or whatever, and now these people going back to WoW, begging for the scraps from Blizzard. Please give me my fix, Blizzard. It really does seem like an addiction. They don't know
Well,
what
the
to
thing
do.
is, if I could tolerate that if they came by it honest, if they were actually honest about how much they wanted to be in the alpha and how badly they simped to get in and so on. But no, they're all saying that no, they didn't really care one way or the other. Just so happened to go their way, and so they'll check it out. They'll check it out because they had the opportunity to check it out.
Yeah, it's
No. You are still supporting the same company that you found revolting 5 minutes ago because they had created a really toxic culture. You're still playing the same company that exploited the crap out of you in the past. You're still playing the same company that created Diablo Immortal. They can't distance themselves from that. They're still doing that. They're still twisting people around their little finger. They're still creating a new generation of addicts to gambling. They're still doing all that. None of that's changed.
yeah. There's the interesting part is I don't think they know they're addicted. I don't think they realize.
No, they don't, because, like I said, they're in the deepest. They have the most complicated and the most elaborate excuses for how they're not addicted.
Yeah, and they because they have to do all these mental gymnastics, they probably have never had a time in active memory where they weren't playing World of Warcraft, so they just don't
Well,
know
the
what
thing
to
is,
do anymore.
the thing is, a lot of them do now because a lot of them like did disconnect from World of Warcraft. They threw in the towel. Often it's because they're like raging social justice types or whatever who can't stand the fact that they had a bad culture at Blizzard, and that's the reason why they had to distance themselves from it in case they got cancelled by somebody who knew that they were still playing. Yeah, and while that's in effect, they can't play World of Warcraft. And but the thing is, if you've come up with a lot of excuses for you not being addicted, once you do break away, there is no insulation to prevent you from hopping straight back in the moment you get tempted. Because you were never addicted to begin with, right? You're not an addictive person. So you'll leap back in. And there's no addiction there because you weren't addicted before, right? So if I go back and participate in this Dragonflight Alpha, I'm not going to get addicted because before I wasn't addicted, so in the future I won't be addicted either. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, they.
So that inability to face themselves honestly means that they've got no defense against it and they're incapable of acknowledging it once it happens.
Yeah, it's
So you can't tell me that WoW was good for like however like 20 years or whatever that stupid game's been out for. You can't tell me that it was good that entire time and then you finally broke away from it after all of this time when it had hit the absolute nadir of what it was capable of, and the company was evil in plain view and falling apart, and they couldn't develop anything. They weren't supplying any content. And finally, now it crosses the line of not being good enough to play. No, it was just that the resistance had become enough that you were able to break free for a little while, but because you didn't acknowledge any dependency on being part of that system before, you had no defense against being dragged back into that system again. And all of us have experienced it before.
Yeah, we've all gone through it. We've got caught up in a new expansion hype cycle, and these people have one aspect that they probably get way worse than we did, which is people coming out of the woodwork and going, "Hey, new WoW expansion's coming out. You want to go play?"
Yeah, and because they've got the external feedback, because a lot of them are public-facing figures, they don't realize that they could be playing on something in themselves. They can mentally categorize that as just responding to audience requests or something like that.
Yeah, even among their personal friends, most of their circle is probably involved in the games they play. So
yeah, like Bellula's always talking about how the people at his studio, he's got that one guy who supplies them with his sort of like WoW insights because he's like a bleeding edge mythic raider or whatever. It's like constantly surrounded by an influx of WoW news and so on and so forth, and people constantly talking about it around them. Like, you can't tell me you're not addicted to a game that you're like, you step back, you're like, oh, I'm not going to play it seriously anymore. I'm just going to, put out 5 videos a week on it. So you don't think you're still hooked up into that system?
like, yeah. No alcoholic thinks they're an alcoholic or thinks they're a functional alcoholic at best.
Yeah, it's like you can stop anytime you want. No, you actually have to stop in order to show you can stop.
And it takes either external pressure or nearly inhuman willpower to do so.
No, I don't think it's nearly inhuman. I think calling it inhuman willpower is an excuse that people use not to do it. I think that it is a modest amount of willpower and a sincere conviction to do it. It's not like nicotine. Like alcoholic dependency is different to nicotine. Alcohol is about, oh well, it makes me feel in a particular way. Nicotine generates actual distortions in your thinking such that you can only think about how you can ensure that you'll get more nicotine. Like, they're different types of addiction.
But anyway.
But World of Warcraft, like, that is not something that's difficult. Like, you need the resolve to either be an addict or the resolve to quit being an addict. There's not really a middle ground there. I don't think that it's actually really about willpower needing to be particularly spectacular. You can do a lot of things with a modicum of willpower. Simply the being the type of person who does what you say you will do, which is why like every year, I drink a lot. I'm a heavy drinker, but every year for the 40 days of Lent, I stop drinking when Lent begins, and I don't touch a drop. I don't angst over being unable to touch a drop. And then when it's over, it's like, well, it's celebration time. And I do this every time. It's just the way I do things. I also very, very rarely drink during the week at all. Like, I've got rules and I stick to them. As a result, I'm not an alcoholic, despite being a heavy drinker.
I think this is a perspective that most people will not share because most people do not have the same level of veteranness I do, let alone what you do.
Well, the thing is, I don't really see it as, oh, well, I've got to have these elaborate rules and fetters on my behavior because I'm such an animal. Otherwise, it's like, no, you just need the resolve to do what you say you will do,
Yeah, and I'm
and
saying
not come
that's
up
too
with
much for
excuses
people.
after the fact. It's all about making no excuses. Title drop.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you are not willing to make excuses for going back on your word, so you don't go back on your word, then you don't have this problem.
Maybe I'm just getting very cynical about the nature of people in general, even more so than I already am. But in general, it seems like that's still too much to ask for most people. In fact, that
Yeah,
seems like way
it's
too much
a
to ask for most people. Getting them to hold them
I
to
guess
one thing they've said of a
it
list of
seems
100 is
weird
impossible.
because it's like, well, this is just a part of the daily human experience. Is that you will say you're going to do things, or you'll ask people to do things, and you might regret offering to do something later on. But you said you would do it, even if nobody will find out if you don't. You said you would do it. Therefore, in order to be a person that is worth being, you have to follow through on what you said you would do. There's no other option. If you don't, that makes you a bad person.
But yeah,
I don't understand how you can live with yourself if you aren't, if you can't like, because the smallest thing that you can be, I think, is to at least do what you say.
yeah, and I would agree that should be the bare minimum standard. Unfortunately, that's the upper echelon of integrity right now with the modern world.
I guess that is what people are being acclimated to, that or however you feel at any given moment is more important than what reality would say about it.
Yeah, I would say that is in the top 5 percentile of people with of integrity levels in the world is people that just do what they say they're going to do. Because most, the vast majority of people I know have flaked on me or just not done what they said they're going to do many times.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't follow through on what you say you're going to do, you could just easily not promise to. Like, that's an option. It's available.
And Serathis, I did get you that dang review eventually. It just, you didn't give me a time frame. I stuck to the letter of my word.
But yeah, it's I and the center point of all of this is that I don't like the practice of attributing spectacular willpower to things, because I think that willpower is something different from willingness or unwillingness. Like, willpower is something that you use when you are trying to overcome something that is against what is your nature. Fundamentally, like, you have to use willpower when you know you're set up against an enemy. Whereas when it comes to choosing to do or not do a thing, you need only choose to do or not do a thing, barring extenuating circumstances. Like, a crack junkie can't think properly anymore. They've destroyed their own ability to do that. So it's not enough for them to just decide something, because their brain will turn into mush the next time it realizes that it's too short on drugs. They can't maintain a mental state. It's not possible. And I have severe doubts about the ability of a video game to induce something like that. That is outside the bounds of simply you choosing to do what is easy, or you choosing to do what is proper.
Under that definition, no, you're in the right ballpark. I think it's I was speaking more proportionally to the general population was the point I was trying to make. Is that most people are too unwilling, in the words you want to use, to do it.
Yeah, the problem is that this is coupled to that self-deception.
Yeah, because
That they can't acknowledge that there might be a problem here. Like, let's say that World of Warcraft is the addictive cancer that people are afraid that it might be. Number one, why do you think you are special and immune to that? And number two, if it's so toxic, why are you supporting it? Like, those are other questions that you have to answer if you're going to adopt the position of, oh yeah, but I'm not addicted, but I'm still supporting this potentially addicted thing. It's just everybody else who is addicted.
I quit whenever I want, bruh. I'm just checking it out again.
Yeah, that's why, we've got this it's bad for you meme.
Do you remember the feeling when you finally got over WoW after you quit, and how much happier life was?
Uh,
Aside from,
yes, except that I still play gacha.
I'm talking
So, like,
specifically about the quality increase after WoW.
yeah, it's like I could feel it was like it's like some chunk of rock that was attached to me had fallen off, and there's something was a little bit lighter.
Yeah, you suddenly had that WoW time could now be used to play games you actually wanted to play, things that interested you, or to make progress in your actual real life work, or in another game that you actually want to play, or to go watch shows or something. Do things
Yes,
other than get yelled at by a bunch of people for several hours and play a game that just keeps trying to keep you on a treadmill forever and make you do more work as soon as you get home.
the thing is, I don't mind treadmill gameplay, but World of Warcraft was just abusive for no return. Like, the quality of the game was just falling off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Just not inspiring at all. And you know what would take to tempt me back into it would essentially be it being a totally different game, at which point it wouldn't be becoming addicted to the same thing again, it would be becoming addicted to something else. Like, it's, I don't feel any draw to play it anymore at all. It's just so, from the outside it looks so strange to be playing it at all.
Yeah, it just
Like, there's no life to it. Like, the people that are still playing it, it's not what it was back in the day where the world was alive and full of people who were alive within it. Now the world is full of people who are, running on the spot as fast as they can to try and stay where they are.
yeah, it's just
Like, and that's what they're engaged with. They're engaged with the system, not engaged with the world. World of Warcraft, when it launched, was kind of a world, and people lived within it like it was a world, and they behaved like people in a world. Now everybody is playing a game. They might be playing a few handful of different games, but they're all just engaged with the system and turning a crank.
yeah,
And it's very obvious turning a crank. Sure, the crank was there as sort of like underlying machinery in the original version, but I mean, outside of like explicit purpose built RP communities, who does anything with anybody in a city anymore in World of Warcraft? Like, there's no social events take place, which is the thing that causes the weird reactions with people coming to Final Fantasy 14 more than anything. People say it's because people just sort of hang out together in the cities.
yeah,
It's like the people spending time in the cities, just being in the cities, watching people go by, talking to people. Like, this is a thing that actually happens because the culture in Final Fantasy is still somewhat different to what WoW became, but it's similar to what WoW used to be.
yeah. It's
And so it's rendered down to the point where it is just a system. And once you break outside of it, because it sort of sneaks up on you, right? If you've been playing WoW a long time, it's like you get boiled in the pot like the frog, a little at a time.
yeah. Initially,
Once you break away from it and you look back in, it looks like this bizarre alien pod which is designed to suck the life out of you.
yeah, and you can point to every little change they did over time that led to that point. When I think back on WoW, there are three distinct eras or four distinct eras in WoW. There was the beginning, the early WoW, which was through Wrath of the Lich King from vanilla, and then there was post Wrath of the Lich King up to Cataclysm. There was post Cataclysm, or during or post VTW Guild to whenever the heck I quit in Cataclysm, and then there was the post Mop era that when I played, and it is a stark difference. The reason I played each time, WoW was big, this mysterious, wondrous world with that you could actually interact with people, and it actually mattered that you were the character that you were on screen, and you had a reputation on a server, and you could carry an identity through a server. You had yourself there, and you could interact with people as people, and it was an actual world in the original WoW, all the way up through.
Implying anybody on Durotan was ever worth interacting with.
Oh no, we were all drama queens, but then after Wrath of the Lich King came out and the Duty Finder really settled in, or
Not
the
just Duty Finder plus gear score.
yeah really settled in. That's when it first started, and then my reason to play changed because I came over to the BTW server, and I started playing for community instead. And we set up the BTW server and we went through Kata, and everything was okay. We got to watch Snapple Monkey run right off the edge on Magma after telling us, "Don't worry, he's done this 1,000 times," and that was great. He walked right off that edge.
Right off.
Yep.
Yeah, he went right off that edge, much like the skin comes right off.
From his Brazilian prostitutes that he said he had sex with every single day or something like that.
I don't even want to know what goes on in his mind, what he imagined himself doing. But yeah. Yeah, I think of it somewhat similarly, like it loosely grouped into expansions, because my experience with Classic was that, this was an experience more than anything else. I had no idea what I was doing. I was sort of wandering about. No matter what goal I had immediately in front of me, ultimately what it amounted to was wandering about. So while I did do a little bit of in-game content, like I raided ZG, AQ20, that sort of stuff, I did a lot of PvP and so on and so forth. It was just sort of like, I'll do whatever takes my fancy because it's a world of opportunities, right? And Burning Crusade was where I first sort of settled into the gamification mode, where it's like, there is this progression track and you can follow it from start to finish. This is a feasible thing that you can do. So let's try that out. But, I was still with the same guild from vanilla, and we worked together pretty well, and we proceeded through. We made decent progress for a bunch of slackers. And we got there. We had some good times. Quality of the game relative to the capabilities of the people was still pretty good. And it all broke down in Wrath of the Lich King. Even at the launch of Wrath of the Lich King. Most people feel that the game was at its peak, but what we experienced was that we were smashing our faces trying to get through Nax 40. And then the world changed. And then once Nax came back again, and we romper stomped it, a lot of people were broken by that in my guild. It's like, this is not raiding. What is this? We worked so hard to be raiders. And what is this? They're just giving this away. All of these purples, they're not valuable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what we entered into there. And I quit playing. I came back at the end of Wrath to see what had changed. And no, what had changed was that now you could get purples in 5-man dungeons effortlessly by clicking a button to get a group. And then, provided that they weren't running a gear score mod to turf you out, you would go into a dungeon, everything that dropped would be purple, and you would walk out of a dungeon coated in purples. It's like, oh, wow. This is a thing now. And that sort of killed my interest a bit. And like you, I came back to Kata for community, and only for community. No other reason. There was no other reason. And then it died again for me when we were progressing slowly because we were incompetent. Then they just nerfed everything.
Yeah, the nerf is what killed it there. And I poked my head in a little bit around after that, but pretty much quit then.
Yeah, I quit then. I didn't play for the entire rest of Kata. I didn't even come back at the end of Kata. Didn't come back at the beginning of Mop. Came back after Mop was over, just to see, what's happened since I've been gone. And I played a little bit, but I didn't do any serious content whatsoever. Just did some dungeons, did the story to see what was going on, and it basically didn't really have any grip on me at all. I ended up playing a lot of alts in the hopes of recapturing what it felt like to play through the old world, but now that's not really possible. And so it was just kind of blah. And Warlords of Draenor, I decided to get back into raiding, but again, that was only sustained by a handful of people that made it worthwhile, because the expansion was mechanically crap, setting was stupid. The individual boss fights many of them were quite fun, and so it was still sort of worth engaging with for snatches at a time. But I really had the feeling while I was playing it that this doesn't really feel like it's worthwhile. Um, Quality went up during Legion for a lot of things. They came up with some interesting ideas, but by the end of Legion, it had it actually threw out Legion, but because it had really started to bite during Hellfire Citadel. But by the time I was in Legion, it was like, no, this is just a system now. This is a system that we're furiously trying to work in the hopes that we can recapture something that's gone now. And then, once that happened, I moved on, basically. It's like, oh, well, I've got a job now. That's my excuse to never play this again. And so I haven't played it again, ever, since
Yeah.
I started working. It's like I had the perfect excuse to end my commitment because I had went into being a core raider with the assertion that, well, eventually I'm going to get a job and then I won't be able to be relied upon for my schedule. And once I got a job, that was my excuse to quit. And I didn't just quit raiding, I quit the entire edifice.
Yep. I did come back for one more section than you did with Classic WoW. And that was fun. And then the second Blizzard did the Blitzchung thing, I said that's crosses a moral line, and uninstalled the Battle.net launcher and haven't opened it since.
Yeah, I haven't installed the Battle.net launcher since I quit either. Despite the fact that I had huge amounts of accumulated mods, I just nuked the whole lot of them.
Yep.
No launcher, no nothing.
Makes it much harder to go back if you have to go through the remodding of the game.
I own Overwatch and I never fired it up even once because I just didn't have any desire to play a Blizzard product ever.
Yeah.
Not.
I feel very fortunate in a way that I had such a hectic and difficult time in real life going on when Warlords of Draenor was going on, because remember I had all those real life issues with my grandparents and stuff and having to stay and take care of them.
You were not a very good shaman, I have to say.
Yeah, I was not a good anything. I was not in a good headspace for any of Draenor because I was doing all that, and it was compounded by the fact I was drinking more because of it at the time. Man, that was messed up. But eventually, it got too much for me at that, and I had to quit. And that's when I cut myself from the raid scene entirely. And then I came back very, very, very briefly at the start of Legion, and I skipped all of Warlords of Draenor, except I came back very, very briefly for one stint to help you guys when somebody came in, was like, we need somebody to come back and slot fill, and we'd like you to come back now that it's several months later for, I think it was the second patch that was out. And
I don't remember. We constantly had recruiting problems because everybody did. So.
Yeah, and then so I came back very briefly to help you guys out for that, and then I was done. Never raided again.
I think that a couple of expansions worth of putting up with Emerus is more than enough for one lifetime.
He wasn't that way when I knew him originally. Don't know what the military did to him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope it wasn't. I mean, I don't know whose idea it was to move us to Proudmoore. I don't know why they did. But, yeah, nobody told me that it was the social justice server.
Yeah. And it was all that time was time that valuable lessons were learned. I don't think any of the time was wasted. Because as long as you
For
learn...
me, it was characterized so much by wanting to like something more than I actually did like it, and having to identify that that's what was going on.
Yeah. But you notice how we're able to talk about all these things, looking back on how WoW used to be and why we played it, and all these people we're complaining about on YouTube have no ability to do this. Or they think they do. And they'll give you systems and mechanics and things they think are fun, but they don't talk about things like the community or the world or stuff like that and how it feels. Not very much. They may talk about it a little bit in one-off video essays.
They do, but they don't connect it to the broader experience. They don't realize that those are the things that actually drive how good the game is. The mechanics aren't that. Bad mechanics can make a game bad, but good mechanics can't make a game good if everything else about it is bad.
Yeah, you can have fun in a bad game with people you like.
It's like they always I think that the part of it is just streamer disease with a lot of these celebrity types, and the problem is that they draw people into their orbit as a result, and so you end up with a population of people who think things that are very, very silly, like that somehow something is different this time. Like, what is different this time? And the best thing that they can come up with to say is usually, oh well, there are more blue posts on the forums this time. Like, because Blizzard's never talked a good game in the past, have they? But that was always how it was. That was always how it was. This alpha cycle seems to be identical to every other alpha cycle. Maybe the character count of blue posts might be slightly higher. I don't know whether it is or not. Maybe it is. What does that mean as far as actually changing the way the game is in a meaningful sense? Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Even if you have a good launch, lots of expansions had good launches and then went bad ways in the future because the incentives are perverse. The incentives have nothing to do with making a good game, and the thing that I think most of them aren't willing to realise is that their incentives have nothing to do with player retention either. You just need to get that dinero. Doesn't matter if you get it from one player or 1 trillion players. If you can get the dosh, that's all that really matters.
Yep. Also, I'm finding out just how hard it is to pick an outfit and a zoomed in camera angle with the UI off while we're just talking, where I'm not flashing the entire stream with my undergarments from the camera trying to find its way up my skirt.
You've never seemed to have a problem with that before.
It's a little different when it's going up the skirt.
Well, I'm sure it happens all the time in Limsa. You just can't see other people's monitors. Limsa's a special place.
Yeah, I don't go to Limsa. I hang out in Gridania.
Yeah, I mostly do hang out in Gridania these days. I did used to spend a lot of time in Limsa simply because there were more convenient Aetherites, but these days it's mostly Gridania. I expect you mainly hang out here, though.
Oh yeah, I've got to know Quarry Mill quite well. I was demonstrating advanced hopscotch for the stream that I figured out you can do between the buildings over there.
But so Blizzard are scumbags. Blizzard have always been scumbags, it seems, and they will continue to be scumbags until they cease to exist, unless somebody buys them out, fires everybody, mothballs most of their IPs, and then goes back to being like the Lost Vikings company or something.
Yep.
With entirely new staff. Like, and I don't even know at that point why you would even bother trying to salvage it. The $100 million on Diablo Immortal means that their attention is now somewhere else. Because that game, I'm willing to bet, did not cost all that much to make, relatively speaking. Aren't there like a zillion of those ARPG clones on mobile already?
Yeah, and on PC.
Yeah, and they just like farmed it out to some other dev to do the grunt work. And they're collecting the dosh. Like, what incentive is there to care about any of their other content?
Yeah, let's get a good shot of Quarry Mill in the background. There we go. So yeah.
So next on the list is
the big one I want to talk about is the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax rollback netcode thing.
It's a discussion I don't really understand very much, but everybody seems to like have attached to the idea of having rollback netcode as sort of like this weird totemic thing that categorically makes a game better.
Yeah, so I'll reiterate the difference between traditional netcode and rollback netcode before we, for fighting games anyway, before we dive into the topic too much. The difference is with traditional netcode, there's an input delay based on your latency between the person you're playing with and you that will be applied to your button presses. That's traditional latency. And depending on how good the netcode's set up, it can handle this really, really bad or really, really good and be practically not noticeable outside of the toppest of top tier frame or single frames matter play. And Arc System Works used to use the best version of this netcode I've seen, especially for cross-region for the purposes of this discussion. The game would lag really bad at startup, but it would do something in that lag and at the start of a match while the intro's playing, so that you would just, the thing we would always say is don't skip the intro, because it's got to figure itself out. And after it figured itself out, you were pretty good. You were certainly better than any other input netcode, input delay netcode out there for fighting games, for cross-region play. Now, rollback netcode is different. Rollback netcode instead will attempt to predict what the character's next frame will look like based on the inputs of both players at the time and the current character animations going on. And it will attempt to make sure everything plays correctly on screen, and if there is an error because of latency, it will roll the game back on the person with the connection issues screen to however many frames it needs to reflect what buttons were pushed in real time between both the players. Now, for a competitive game, it seems on the surface or for a fighting game, it seems like on the surface, rollback netcode just seems a little better if the frame rollback isn't too bad. The problem comes when you try to do anything outside of a same country connection or even a same region connection on rollback netcode. Because unless the netcode is razor sharp, what actually winds up happening is the person with the not perfect connection is watching their game. You saw us lagging earlier in the dungeon on those bosses, and me teleporting everywhere on Vol's screen, and everything teleporting everywhere on my screen when I lagged? That's what it looks like in a fighting game if you have a bad connection with rollback netcode. Now, if you have input delay netcode, all that's going to happen is it just takes too long for your buttons to get out if the netcode's bad, or if it's really good, like our SystemWorks was, and it has the little calibration it does at the start, then you can play pretty much normally, and it won't be perfect, but you can make it work. So, casual play amongst friends cross-region just doesn't work with rollback netcode. Period, end. The internet technology to make information travel quickly ain't there yet.
I suppose there's two major things I think are of interest to discuss here. The first is this obsession with rollback netcode seems very strange because it's like I could almost forgive them for wanting rollback netcode when they were locked down and all of, because a lot of why fighting games keep being made is because of the FGC, and the FGC lives and dies on its competitions and the hype that it can build for them in a lot of ways. And when nobody is allowed out of their houses because of overreach of governments, you need some way to conduct all of those things online. So a large scene like the East Coast or the West Coast of the US or Japan, with rollback netcode, maybe nationally they can get better performance without having to all be in the same venue.
Yeah, and that...
So I can sort of understand that. But now that this is all water under the bridge, why is everybody still so fanatical about needing it? Like, oh, well, a game is not worth playing until it has it.
So, rollback netcode in general performs better for people within the same country, and you're okay across country in the US with it. Cross country in the US, you can usually get away with it. And somebody will see a little bit of choppiness sometimes. And it's only when you go much further than that you start seeing the real problems pop up. So, as far as the FGC in the United States was concerned, and is concerned, rollback netcode is just superior in every way. Because these people, the FGC in particular, are all the sweatiest of sweaty gamers. So they're playing at that top level where single frames matter. So they've always wanted rollback netcode. They've been pushing for this for a while, and they didn't get the real juice to make the hyper push until the COOF. And
yeah, I'm having a great deal of difficulty crediting that, because where their play really matters in practice is in person, where that's not an issue. If you're that sweaty, if you're playing at a competitive level, when it matters, you won't have to worry about it.
I have a theory, and this is just a theory. A fighting game theory. Ha 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 ha. I hate Matt Pat. Anyway, the idea I've been kicking around is that the reason they were shilling it so hard before the COOF was actually because they're lazy and they don't want to get up and have to go to the venues anymore, and they want to be able to just do all this crap from their house.
Are they all like the size of man or something?
Oh yeah, they're all. Well, actually, the best of the best fighting game players, except for like Justin Wong, who is kind of fat and chunky. He's a fat, chunky Asian boy. are relatively in shape, but most of the
What,
FGC is your stereotypical fat nerd.
which is sort of the one reason why they can't ever, don't really have any hope of getting into the mainstream the way other esports have tried to, because they're so untelegenic. The other pro gamers, like the LoL gamers and that, they always had to maintain very strict dietary regimens and stuff like that because, well, you need to be in top form. But the thing that seems to matter more than any of that in the FGC is the degree of autism required to be nearly precognizant of what your opponent is doing, and you don't need to be fit for that.
Yeah, it's in the FGC. Think of fighting games as far as competitive gaming goes, more as wrestling than a sport. Whereas
Brother.
while the other games are trying to emulate esports, the FGC is trying to be, the WFC or whatever.
So
They're
they've got all the commentators and the smack talk are all on point.
yeah, like you got IFC Yipes, my favorite commentator, who is just a crazy dreadlock uh, New York. I think he's New York. Black guy that's just really fun to listen to. And
I
he's
feel like in the Western FGC, black guys from New York are dramatically overrepresented.
yeah, they are because most of the fighting game scene is in New York and the New Jersey area, up there for the East Coast anyway, and it's in SoCal for the West Coast, which is Southern California for those not American. So so yeah, you got all your commentators that are doing all the hype commentary, like this is where we get the curly mustache meme, and with Yipes talking about how Magneto's opening him up like a can of Pringles, and he just can't stop. He's got the curly mustache, and you get all that kind of stuff. You get your big characters like
All
Justin Wong, who
significantly inferior to Mantistic.
yeah, that was spooky. Who is also a pretty good commentator, and is also buddies with Yipes. And then you have the players who are like Justin Wong, who has alternated between being face and heel so many times. Where when he's been on top for a long time, he's the heel that everybody needs to take down. Nobody wants to see Justin win because he's been winning so much, and it's time for new blood to come in and get it. And it's just they're tired of seeing Justin take it all the time. And then after Justin gets knocked down, and he comes back in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with a rogue team that's just the same team he's been using forever, but it's not meta anymore. And he comes back and he wins the whole thing and takes back his crown. And that's a real hype moment. He's the face during that season. And then the next one rolls around, and you got like Sonic Fox being Sonic Fox.
Does he have to really?
Unfortunately.
We will never forgive you, Jeff Keighley.
Yeah, never forget. If you ever think Jeff Keighley has any legitimacy, he let Sonic Fox happen on his show.
He didn't have to, but he did it anyway. All because he thought he'd get some diversity points for it.
And oh boy, I bet he regretted that.
I don't know if he regrets anything. I don't think he's.
He certainly seemed to be regretting it in real time, or at least his showrunners did, because they were frantically trying to shoo Sonic Fox off stage.
Yeah, I suppose it's a case of like his entire shtick is to try and brown note the great and good of Hollywood, and if he loses rep because he let Sonic Fox on stage, that might make it harder.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that sort of segues the sort of the pro wrestling writing aspect of it, and the way people are expected to behave towards individuals who are big names in the FGC. It sort of segues into the other of the 2 points I want to discuss on this topic. And the other one is that, laying aside the specifics of the netcode, what I've noticed is that no matter whether or not you are part of the sweatiest of the sweaty at the top of the FGC, and of course the vast majority of people simply aren't. They're not in that tier. Most of them don't really want to be in that tier. They will never be in that tier. This discussion isn't relevant to them, right? But nevertheless, somehow, everybody, it seems like, who wants to have an opinion has the same opinion that at all times and in all places and for all purposes, rollback netcode is superior to everything for all time, and no other opinion is worth listening to. Any developer which ever used anything else is simply wrong-headed, and they will eventually see the light and be converted to the worship of the great god, rollback netcode.
So
And this seems like a really unhealthy way to propagate information through a customer base and a dangerous roadblock to actually improving netcode.
yeah, so there are a few reasons for this, I think. The first one is most people that play fighting games and go online to talk about them have reached at least the level of competency I am, which, while not super high, is enough to be able to tell when you're losing frames. And you're able to keep up with the game at that speed, and you don't think about inputs anymore. You're just doing moves and abilities and looking at what the characters have. Unless you're just following fighting games for the characters, you're probably at least that level of competency, so you can see the difference when you play rollback netcode with somebody in your same country. And in that circumstance, it is better. But, yeah, well, actually, hang on. Pivot. The other reason, one of the other reasons, I think, is most of the fighting game players get into fighting games because they have a friend that gets them into it. And a bunch of these fighting game players are still highly concentrated in local areas, and they get invited to arcades as their introduction, and they get to know people locally for fighting games. And so they play with their friends who are all very close and nearby. So when they play a game with rollback netcode, it looks even better to them because they're all playing with their friends who almost certainly live close by. Another reason is just in general, because the top tier players are saying it, everybody's gonna want to latch onto what they're saying because they're the best, so they're gonna be right. I think that I've seen that mentality, or that vibe of that mentality, come off a lot in a lot of the normal people simping for the rollback netcode. And and yeah, there's a few other reasons I had in my head that I pulled out of air there, but it's understandable how it could get to this point when you combine all the various factors that go into making up the FGC as the FGC, and just what it is as an entity, and the types of people that comprise it. And
But what I'm seeing though is people on the fringes of it who otherwise don't have an opinion about netcode one way or the other, now have adopted this posture of sagely nodding and saying, yes, rollback netcode, that's the best thing. We need rollback netcode everywhere. Everyone should be using it.
yeah,
Like it's just become one of these things that is sort of like de facto fact.
yeah,
And which means that there's not actually reasoning behind it. And when people have accepted something as fact with no reasoning behind it, it means that to pivot away from that fact will become incredibly difficult.
yeah, and it's one of those things that just inculcated itself as the standard. Yeah, that's a good thing, because most people don't know the difference between the two types of netcode. Most of these people shilling for rollback netcode don't know what rollback netcode is, or what the difference is between that and traditional input delay netcode.
As somebody who lives on the arse of the world, like, I have no interest in rollback netcode whatsoever. It's never going to be any good for me. But you can't actually make the argument the other way for, oh well, okay, so maybe it doesn't work so well to use input delay when you're closer to each other, but I don't know, maybe there's a third way, maybe there's another solution. No, you can't have that discussion anymore because people just know the word rollback netcode and it is the best.
Yeah, we can't have a discussion about what was Arc System Works doing that made their netcode so good for input delay relative to everybody else. Could we build off that? Could we make something even better?
Yeah, is there not some way you could have a hybrid system that was able to negotiate between the two methods of dealing with these things depending on the quality of connection and pick whichever one would give the better performance? Why does it always have to be one or the other?
Why not have a toggle in some games that are able to provide the netcode for both? Some companies are big enough and would be able to do that. Capcom certainly would. Arc System Works probably could now. Why is that?
Well, they've written both now, so...
Yeah. So, I mean, is there no reason you could not choose in a custom game, for instance, when you're playing with your friends?
And the reason is that you can't have the discussion now because one is better than the other.
Yeah, I know.
Unga bunga.
I know. It's but yeah, that's the point I'm getting at. Is we can't have this discussion because it has gotten so stuck in the brains of people. Like many memes, and I don't mean memes in the internet sense of the word. I mean memes in the sense of ideas. That rollback netcode is just better, and I think a lot of it can just be written up to, well, everybody's saying it is, and it started from the best players say it is. So all the fighting game players started saying, yeah, rollback netcode's probably the best, and they probably got a good experience when they tried it. And so because you're not playing very many international people when you play fighting games, unless you're playing to Japan. And most fighting games give you the ability to search by same region only, which most people leave on if they're serious about playing. So people probably had a very good experience with rollback netcode and setting the thing to same region, and are like, no, this is just the way to go. And that was all she wrote. And that's all they thought about. And did not think of the repercussions of losing the other types of netcode or barring the discussions of improving netcode further. And it's not like they intended to do it. It's just the nature of ideas like this when they infect a certain critical number of people within a community. When a certain percentage of people think one way in any group, it just becomes accepted as fact, and you can't question it anymore.
Yeah, and I think that it is hazardous because it could be that there's some developer who's been able to come up with a system of netcode that is different to what has existed in the past and is better than both, and yet they can't implement it because they know that the game will never be picked for Evo because all of the competitors will sneer at it not having rollback netcode.
Like, we were able to play not even Chrono Phantasma, the one before the Blaze Blue before that one. We were able to play that with, what, 6 frames of input delay on Arc System Works' old input delay netcode?
It was pretty good. Like, which one was it? What comes between Calamity Trigger and
Continuum Shift?
Continuum Shift?
Yeah.
Continuum Shift. Continuum Shift was the second one, and that's the one that I played with you guys. And I didn't note anything particularly terrible about the experience. Like, I could feel that it wasn't perfect, but it was just a vague feeling that it wasn't perfect. It was very serviceable, and back then I was on an atrocious connection.
Yeah, and we managed to get 6 frame input delay, which is pretty good, really good for cross region. And the only thing
we didn't have to use some sort of weird middleware software to do it.
Yeah, the only thing was don't skip the intro, because we had to let it buffer and figure itself out because the way Arc System's netcode works. And I'm not sure what it does. They've never revealed how that works, and it doesn't seem like anybody ever talked about it, because as soon as the discussion came up, where that might have been a relevant discussion, rollback netcode became the dominant force in conversation.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I've always favoured anime fighters. I think that they're just better than the classic Street Fighter one, and they're definitely better than Tekken. But not that anybody plays Tekken, but or Mortal Kombat, which I wish nobody played Mortal Kombat. But I guess that they might get a little bit more respect now that they're not, like, Axis is not, basically attached to this sort of scarlet letter form of netcode that's not going to get them accepted. But what I'm concerned about, as somebody who lives on the arse of the world, like, there's going to be some way that somebody will be able to develop something cunning that will make things better for everybody. But now we've got this big obstruction of basically snobbishness that's in the way of ever getting it. It's very frustrating because my reaction to these news articles about Persona 4, and I saw another one. It might be King of Fighters or something. Does anybody play King of Fighters? Do people play that?
It's still got an audience. It's not as big as the other fighting games, but big enough to keep it, in the top 5 fighting games that are being played at any given time.
But yeah, I see these news articles periodically, and it's just like, article rhapsodizing about the addition of rollback netcode and how this is a universally good thing. And I'm like, it's not for me. If I was to take an interest in any of these games, it's just going to be an incredibly crappy experience for me if I try and play them with somebody. So yeah, it's a disincentive to me.
I wonder if Arc System Works would be able to do something similar to what they did with their input delay netcode and apply that same kind of buffering they had at the beginning of the match to...
Yeah, it's like all you need to do is measure the latency and then decide which approach is going to be best and proportionally apply it.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying now is I wonder if, even though they're stuck on on rollback now because they've committed to it, and they committed to it due to fan pressure. This was entirely due to
I know
fan pressure.
that's why I've created this discussion about the fan reaction, is because this is not because Arxis judged that it was better.
Yeah, no, this was an outcry from the FGC, and in order to keep their games relevant, like, okay, if that's really what you want and you're all screaming that loudly, we'll listen to the customer, which as a company I can respect. I just wish we could have taken specifically Arc System Works netcode and evolve it further, and I wonder if there is a way they can combine the old buffering system they had with rollback netcode to make an even better form of super rollback netcode that would work cross-region. That would be great.
It seems to me like that's the way to go, to develop a system which can proportionally apply these strategies of ameliorating latency in the way that is more suitable to the magnitude of the latency, because this is the sort of thing that, like, this is like a university level engineering systems controls problem. Would be to come up with a control system to modulate the amount of which type of system you're going to apply to buffer a particular effect relative to the size of the feedback. Like, this is very, very standard system, and like as somebody who's got a degree in biochemistry amongst my degrees, like, this is the standard way that biological systems do things. They will take proportional feedbacks from various sources, which will have upregulation effects on various responses proportional to what is going on in the system as a whole, and then you will get a measured response which will draw from different strategies for approaching the situation at hand to produce the optimal outcome. Like, this is something that is logical from an engineering standpoint to do, but if rollback netcode becomes totemic, then tampering with it will be verboten.
Yep. And it has already entrenched itself for now. So I think what, unfortunately, we're going to have to do with it is we're going to have to let rollback netcode saturate the fighting game market for a while and wait until another netcode can be pushed after rollback netcode is not the current in thing. Because for a while, nobody's going to hear anybody naysaying it. Probably for at least three.
So once it becomes
years.
the only type of netcode, people will forget the name and they won't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it'll have to be another game that comes out with some amazing type of netcode that is able to make waves. And if we can, and then international play becoming a thing, will help. But we need to give it about 3 to 5 years to let it set in.
It does need to be a topic that people have forgotten about effectively. And then it will have to be some other title coming along that introduces itself as having vastly superior capacity for international play.
Yeah, and this is...
And then you're going to have shill elements of the FGC push it by working an angle that anybody who doesn't want to play it is because they're too cowardly to play against people from other regions.
Yeah, this is about the path we're going to have to take if we want to see improvements in netcode. And like, I play with you and Fern mostly for multiplayer games. I'm not the same little social butterfly I used to be. I don't have the same giant circle of friends I used to. So I mostly only play games with you, Fern, and Abo. And 2 or 3 of those are out of my region by quite a ways.
Honestly, I've actually been a bit incredulous at how good the application of netcode has been to Monster Hunter. Like, it's one of those very few games that I play online cross-region that I don't notice any problems at all 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, whatever they've done, whatever type of netcode they have used to smooth that one out has reduced to the point where the fact that you are not in the same room has become completely unnoticeable to me most of the time.
Yeah. It's just one of them hidden gems, and why couldn't that team talk to the guys making the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 netcode, because holy crap, that was bad.
These Capcom teams are entirely siloed, which is sometimes a good thing.
Yeah. It is my working theory. I think I read it in an interview once. I cannot remember.
I don't want them to get any Street Fighter in my Monster Hunter. Thank you very much.
Well, they already did that in World. There's a Ryu costume.
Well, I that's just an aesthetic though. That would have been spearheaded by the marketing department, not the Street Fighter guys. I don't want the people who make commercial decisions about how you're going to push it into the mainstream involved, because I don't want Monster Hunter open with a rap song or something stupid like that.
Oh goodness. But yeah, it's it's a thing to that's going on right now. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax is an older game now. It's had a few years. Remember, you guys might remember when I was counting down the days till its release and all that, and I had a ton of fun with the game back when it first came out. I've even rebought it on PC to play with people and to just go in and play because I do enjoy the game. But
It was one something that ran aground for me, not through my fault, not through its fault really, but through the localizer of the original's fault.
yeah, because of some
Because I sort of needed to get on the train at the same time as everyone else. It's like how while I still have every intention of playing
Elden
Elden
Ring,
Ring,
yeah,
it's just because I fell off the train due to my computer blowing a sprocket. It requires a massive amount more activation energy to go back to it.
yeah.
And in the case of a fighting game where I already have zero in there because it's so hard to learn from a cold start, that it's just like, oh, I'll check out. I'll check out of this franchise, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's I love the game to death, but it had, for those that don't know, Persona 4 Arena had a incredibly wonky launch in regions outside of the US and Japan because for some weird licensing reason, a different company had to publish and localize the game than normally publishes stuff. And for they there was some reason in this wonky licensing hiccup that this thing had to be region locked. So you could not buy a US Persona 4 Arena and play it in a New Zealand PlayStation 3.
Yeah, it was like one of only a handful of games that were like that. Like my version of Project Diva for PS3, my PS3 copy, both of them, in fact, one of them is North American actually. The other one is Japanese. Project Diva, the first one, is Japanese. My second one is American because the Japanese one sold so many copies to people overseas that they localized it. But the I had no problem with that, and it's sort of like a niche title that very few people would have purchased back then, and it worked fine because that was the norm for the PS3. Things weren't region locked. There was like a list not long enough to fill an A4 page
There were
of
two.
titles that were region locked.
According to Wikipedia, there are only 2 games that are region
Oh,
locked.
really? I thought it was more like a dozen, but maybe there was less than that. But
There
yeah,
was Persona 4
the thing
Arena
is,
and Way of the Samurai 3.
they had pitched the release date as being a simultaneous release,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had pre-ordered it along with everyone else in the hope that it could get to me in a timely fashion. And because I pre-ordered it on a deal that it would ship to arrive on release, and since you were going to be able to get it locally, I was not. I was sort of hoping that this would give me the best chance to get in on the ground floor, but no, it got delayed and delayed and delayed, and eventually they added a soundtrack disc to it because it was as an apology because it was so delayed. The publisher delayed it and delayed it and delayed it
And we're
delayed it,
talking
and
half a year delayed at least.
yeah. And by the time it came out, I was so cooled on it that I just didn't really care. And I played it a little bit, and there were some funny scenes in there, like the gag wheel where Kanji basically wins everything. I quite enjoyed. I think that was how it went. Like he just unga bungas his way through the entire story and beats all the bad guys and doesn't ever realize what's going on.
Yeah, there's a great Yukiko cooking horror story one in there.
Maybe I would still be interested in playing that franchise, but it seems like they've just decided to, nail the lid on the coffin so nothing can crawl out at this point. I don't really know why. Maybe they felt like it wasn't easy enough to distinguish it from the equally Byzantine lore of Guilty Gear. But Guilty Gear is another one that, even though I think it is the gold standard in gorgeous anime fighters, it's too hard to get into because number one, the game is appallingly complex, and number two, the it's got such a storied history to it that I would feel like everything was an in-joke that I didn't understand.
Okay, scratch that. It was a 9-month delay between U.S. release and the EU, which was your region, release.
Yeah, it's just... Ugh. absolutely disappointing. I wish it hadn't gone that way, but it did, and that's water under the bridge
Good
now.
gravy, this
But
game came out in 2012 for me.
yes, you're that old. Did you not realize? It wasn't yesterday.
I know, but I just
It wasn't even last week
every reminder,
that you are now an old person.
it just hurts.
Like you watched your little cousin grow up. I would have thought you would have realized this.
Yeah, no. I don't have
Is he finishing high school yet?
Oh, he's out of high school now. He's got a job.
He's out of high school. Yeah.
Yeah, he's working at the local Publix now.
That's how old you are.
He's not going to college. Good on him. And he's working at the local.
Now.
Yeah, and he's working at Publix, and I'll probably hire him at the family business once he gets a little bit older and a little bit more mature. And I've taken over.
You can teach him a decent work ethic. Try not to let him learn any lessons from his old man.
Oh yeah, he's attached to me and what I've taught him over what his dad has taught him. I guess because I'm just not his dad, so therefore I'm cooler.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't really see me getting into any fighting games moving forward unless they make the Type Moon fighter of my dreams, because Melty Blood is a little bit inaccessible to me in some ways because it's got such a storied history of its own, and I just don't have that much of an affinity for the Tsukihime setting anyway. The guy wrote it when he was a young edgelord, and so to me, it's a lot of it is just cringe. Like, there are characters in it that I like here and there, but it's still kind of cringe. Like, I don't like reading Tsukihime. I read two routes. I read Ark's route because it's compulsory, and I read Akiha's route because she's my favorite of the heroines. But the content therein is just like, the writing is so awkward, and there's no censor patch, so I just had to speed through the worst porno writing imaginable.
The mollusks.
Oh, just what were you thinking, you lunatic?
He was probably thinking, where can I get my next drink?
Yeah, probably. But yes, even the writing outside of the unbelievably cringe sex scenes is unbelievably cringe.
Yeah.
I just I think honestly that the Arc route has the worst of it. Because they're trying to, at that stage, because it's always going to be the introductory story, at that stage they are trying to induct you into a setting where they are making a guy who is absolutely has given you no reason to believe he is badass. They're trying to make him look like a badass, and it doesn't come off as sincere at all.
Yeah. So yeah, we're at 3.5 hours. We should probably start wrapping up.
Alright, I'm sure Fern will be deeply, deeply appalled, but I managed to keep you off of the topic of Alex Jones at least.
So yeah.
Maybe he'll give me a pat on the head for that.
Let's talk about Alex Jones.
This will take another hour.
Let's hint at AJ and say, I'm going to sneak him in eventually. I got at least 1 more week, maybe 2 more weeks of No Fern. There will be an Alex Jones mention every show. And if I can remember, and if possible, I'm going to sneak in a discussion about Alex Jones's recent thing. If I can find a way to tie it to media and video games. I don't think it'll be that hard.
It won't be very hard, because I think that the phenomenon that's taking place there is all of a piece with what's happening everywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah, so I don't...
Up, I'll haul him up by a chain, chop his ass up.
Oh boy.
That song is so catchy.
It is. I'm ready. Are you ready to end the show?
Yes, I am ready. My bladder is definitely ready.
Okay. Alright, folks. I don't think we have any closing comments. Email topic of the week for now is if you understood what we were trying to get across with the netcode discussion, you can write us about that and give us your experiences with netcode of different types in different games. And yeah, that'll do. Alright, folks. We will see you next week. Sayonara. Bye-bye.